Welcome live. Pictures at 134.5 kilometers here on the 107th Paris Roubaix. Well, this morning it looked a little bit threatening, you know, when we woke up at Compiègne this morning. The rain had obviously been coming down overnight, and you can see there's vestiges of dampness on the side of the road here. But glad to say that as we were coming up the motorway to Roubaix, the sun was out. It's clouded over a little bit today, but almost perfect conditions at the moment. Not too warm, not too slippery. Just the dust being kept down by the dampness overnight. They've got 134 kilometers to go in this, the queen of all classics. Now, I wonder if I'll change my mind this week and say this is my favorite classic race. Who knows? At the moment, there are 11 riders away up the road with a gap of about 4 minutes. It's Martin Weylandt of Quickstep, Kasper Klostergaard of Saxo, Angelo Follan of Lampre, Steve Carnarvon from Milram, Steve Chavanel of Bouygues Telecom, and Andreas Klier of Cervelo. They have gone clear. They went after about 40 kilometers, and they've now got a gap that's coming down a little bit, 3 minutes and 38 seconds. But that is the situation. And there's a big, big buzz in Compiègne this morning. If you're joining us live here on Eurosport, welcome. We hope you enjoy this 107th edition of the Paris-Roubaix, the very, very first one being won by a German, the only German ever to win Paris-Roubaix, Joseph Fischer, back in 1896. Last year's winner, Tom Boonen, well, he's got to win today, surely. For him, his whole season will be based on this now. Stijn de Walder, his teammate, took the Tour of Flanders just a week ago. And Boonen, well, will they be doing the same as they did last year? 3:38 is the gap. Well, if there was one man you'd want beside you in the commentary box for this race, it is the man I've got next to me. It's my regular sparring partner in the box, but this means something special. This is Paris-Roubaix, and next to me is
and it's, you know, a magnificent race to win, but a horrible race to ride maybe as a rider. But certainly it's, you know, one of the classics where we get huge interest, and of course, you know, with 53 kilometers almost of pavés, and all that can happen, mechanical problems, as we can see here. Once again, the guys from AG2R having problems here. So, you know, it's a situation which is very familiar. Elmiger, of course, you know, he's riding well. We see him in the beginning of season having a crash here, so it's all part of the race.
Certainly is, and the man with Elmiger is Lloyd Mondory, and there away he goes. Mondory getting off, but Elmiger being involved in a crash. He's ripped a bit of that left thigh away already. Beginning to be strung out on the cobbled sections. This is what it's about. Now, it's a totally different race to the Tour of Flanders, this, Sean, isn't it? Tour of Flanders, lots of cobbles, yeah, but lots of hills, 16, 17 hills. This has got 27 sections of pavé, but it's pretty much a flat race.
Yes, well, it's a dead flat race, really. Just the cobblestones are quite a bit more difficult than the Tour of Flanders. And, you know, people that ride the Tour of Flanders randonnée, they think that the cobblestones are really, really difficult and, you know, really rough sections. But here it's something else again. It's, you know, much more difficult to ride over the cobble sections because they're in such a bad state. A lot of the sections, it's frightening at times, and we will see later on as we go into this race some of the worst sections where there's a lot of mud and it's very difficult to ride, you know, to stay upright. I think the good thing today is we've had quite a lot of dry weather. We had some rain last night, but not a huge amount, as we can see here on the side of the road. There's no puddles of water, so that tells us like there's not a lot of water hanging around, and that is a good thing because you know, it makes that bit safer to stay upright. You have a better chance, but certainly there's no guarantee in this one, even with the dry conditions. You know, everyone I think would like just to have the drier conditions, because when it's wet it's so much more dangerous.
It certainly is. You can see that the dust is being kept down. Now, this is the 22nd of 27 sections. This is the Pavé de Bois, and this is the breakaway. Just to remind you who's in it, Wouter Weylandt of Quickstep, right at the back here. Kasper Klostergaard of the Saxo Bank squad, Angelo Furlan of Lamprey, Steve Kozza of Garmin Slipstream, Greg Henderson of Columbia, Alfredo and Wesley Salzberger, both of Francis de Jure, Jus Postuma of Rabobank, Service Carnarvon, our only winner here from Paris Roubaix back in 2001 in this group. Steve Chavanel of Bouygues Telecom and Andreas Klier, a very, very experienced man over cobblestones and a very, very experienced classics rider. At the end of this pavé section, we're going to take a short commercial break. So that is the situation at the moment, 3:38. This is something you'll see all the way through. The soigneurs and mechanics, they actually position themselves at the end of a section of pavé so that if there's any problems and you can get to the end on a flat tire, for example, then at least you will be able to be in with a fighting chance. Service Carnarvon did a very interesting article in Cycle Sport. It's just don't give up. Keep going, because something can always happen ahead of you. Well, we'll discuss that particular aspect of how to approach it with Sean in just a minute, as our 11 breakaway riders have a lead of about 3 minutes and 20 seconds at the moment. Three minutes and 40 seconds is the gap now as the peloton enters section 22 of cobbles, 1.7 kilometers worth at Capelle-sur-Écalion. Just dropping off the back, some of the riders already having trouble. If you're at the back, Sean, in this particular race at this stage, that is game over, really, isn't it, completely, if you're at the back of the peloton?
Well, certainly if you're hanging on the back, it's telling you that you're starting to suffer. And there's a lot of riders here, and as we spoke with this morning at the start, you know, they just go to this race and try and get as far as possible. And there's a lot of them only get to the first feeding station, you know, so it's a special race, and it's certainly a race where you can, you know, pick out a winner easier than you can in the Tour of Flanders, for example, because there you could say there's possibly 25 riders capable of winning a Tour of Flanders. Where here today, unless there's an early break that get away and is allowed to, you know, go into the final, otherwise it's down to about 10 or 12 riders. I think, you know, you could safely say that you'd pick a winner out of that number.
Well, we were talking about Service Carnarvon's comments about not giving up if anything happens here. Phil Nolte writing in on cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com, saying absolutely right. When I remember the Taffy one, Andrea Taffy winning back in 1999, he punctured 3 times, he seemed to remember. So don't give up, just keep going. How important is it to just keep plodding on if you can in this race, Sean? Is always a way back, is there?
Well, always.
I mean, assuming you're not right off the back.
Yes, well, I think in the earlier part, certainly, you know, when you come onto the first cobble sections just after or around the 100 kilometres, if you have problems there, you have to keep fighting, and because there's a lot of groups on the road after the first number of cobblestone sections, and you can find yourself in a group at a minute and a half down, but you can come back because sometimes it slows up front as well, depending on what's between the sections, the Town Macadam sections. If there's quite a big bit of 10-12 kilometres, sometimes the bunch slows down quite a lot, and you can come back without making sometimes a huge effort. So you have to keep on fighting, certainly. But when you get into the final and the last 6 or 8 sections, the race is really on. It's so difficult to get back then because the groups are getting smaller, riders are getting tired. Not as many riders want to do the chasing, not able to do the chasing. So if you find yourself in the, you know, in the last 25-30 kilometres having mechanical problems, that is very, very dangerous. But also in the earlier part, you know, you can just puncture at the wrong time, and the race really goes for a long time after that section of cobbles, and you lose, you know, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. It can be, you know, sometimes difficult, but you have to keep on fighting, certainly in the earlier part of the race, certainly in, you know, in the first 6-8 section of cobbles. You have to keep on fighting because you never know what's going to happen up front.
That's Heinrich Haussler, just readjusting his shorts by the look of it. At the back of this group here, Haussler spoke to Heinrich this morning. He's in good spirits. He says he's a bit tired, I think, mentally, I think, more than physically. He says the legs are still good, but you know, it's been full on for the last 2 months. Sylvain Chavanel, he has been in super form as well. Didn't get a chance to talk to Chavanel this morning. In fact, all the Quickstep boys were well under wraps, including that man there, Stein de Volder. They just kept everything out of the way until Tom Boonen came out, and then he was completely mobbed by the locals. A big turnout at Compiègne this morning, helped by the fact it wasn't raining. And a lot of really relaxed riders. I tell you, it wasn't relaxed were the Japanese riders riding with Skill Shimano. Some of them looked very pale indeed. I don't think they were looking forward to this at all. This race starting way back in 1896. The only German ever to win was Josef Fischer, who won that opening race. Not that much dissimilar in distances, in fact. They never have been. I mean, that was a 280-kilometer race, but imagine the equipment they would have been riding over these sorts of roads. And most of all these tarmac roads, of course, would have been gravel and cobblestones anyway. Some really huge names of cycling winning this race in the past. Eddy Merckx has 3 victories to his name. Rick Van Looy, of course, 3 also. The record held by Roger de Vlaming has 4. Still feels that he could have won possibly 5 if he hadn't signed for the same team as Francesco Moser the following year after his last victory in 1977. Moser himself, who was here yesterday, looking tanned, very fit. Well, he's here actually now, but saw him yesterday. 3 victories to his name, 78, 79 and 1980. The great Bernard Hinault won the race in 1981. Came here to race because he said he never would, and everybody taunted him by the fact he'd never actually done it. So he came, rode it once, won it, went again, says I'm never riding it again, and Julie didn't. Sean sitting next to me won twice in 84 and 86, sandwiching Marc Madio, who of course is leading the Francis de Jure squad here today. Dirk de Mol, who won in 1988, yep, he's here. In fact, he was out yesterday and the day before, just riding the last section himself. And just to see how things were. 3 victories to the name of Johan Museo from 96 through to 2002, and the same for the great Peter van Petegem, the last of his being in 2003. Only 2 Swiss riders have won, Fabien Cancellara in 2006, and the other one was way back in 1923. Henri Suter won. And here's your quiz for the day. Very easy one to get. There are 5 Dutchmen who've won this race. One of them is in this break. See if you can name them. It's cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com. So 5 Dutchmen. And we'll see how quickly you can do it, because it's not really a difficult one to do. Well, there's so much to talk about in this race. Tactics, which sections are worst, which sections can you really make a difference on. Sean's wins, of course, himself, and other wins here. The equipment they're using, don't worry. I know a lot of you love to know exactly what's going on the bikes. We'll talk about that when we come back from a commercial break we're going to go to shortly. The weather, of course, how that's going to affect things. We'll keep you updated. It's getting a little bit grey here, so we never know. And just about riding cobbles in general. So our breakaway has just over 3 minutes now with 125.2 kilometers to go. Welcome back with live shots here with Silence-Lotto on the front. Gosh, surely it's got to be a day for them. They've got to try and do something today. I was talking to Sean about this in the car on the way yesterday to Compiègne. If you'd gone back 5-6 years ago, there was this ding-dong battle, you know, real head-to-head battle between Quick-Step and Lotto, as they were then, as to which was the more dominant classics team, which was the biggest team in Belgium. But it really has swung the way of Quick-Step over the last 5 years. And certainly Lotto, we met Hendrik Guesdon yesterday, Sean, didn't we? And he was saying there seems to be a pressure now within Belgium and within the team. You know, once you lose a winning ways, it's difficult to get your confidence back.
Yes, well, it certainly is when you're a little bit under our best, and I think that is the situation with Lotto over the last number of weeks. You know, a number of the riders not really performing as well as we would have expected them to be performing, and the team certainly, I think, you know, it's getting a little bit nervous there, and you could feel that yesterday. Also with Redant a little bit on the nervous side, and certainly the riders are feeling it. Of course, we've seen Philippe Gilbert, who've moved to the Silence-Lotto team, not perform maybe as well, although a very good finish in the end of the Tour of Flanders, but certainly they need, you know, to have get a win under their belts. And I suppose in the semi-classics as well, they did not perform as well as we would have expected them to be. So certainly, you know, the 2 Belgian teams, Quick-Step, Silence-Lotto, Quick-Step are on top at the moment because, you know, they have won a Tour of Flanders and won some of the semi-classics. And there's always that ding-dong battle between those teams, and I think that, you know, creates a bit more nervousness again between the 2 teams.
Yeah, and they've got a few problems as well. Glenn Dollander is in the squad, as well as Michael Elledson and Michael Delage. They've both been all those three have been brought in as late replacements for other riders who have got various injuries or illnesses. So Delage Ellertson, who was already, funnily enough, he seems to be one of the guys who's always called up last minute. Do you remember he was the guy who was called up for Matt White a few years ago at Cofidis in the Tour de France? They needed somebody to come and take his place when Matt White broke his collarbone warming up for the prologue. And they got him in really quickly. Well, now he is at Silence-Lotto. Nothing changes, does it? He was already on duty at a different race for another rider who was ill, and he's now been called up to ride at Paris Roubaix. So Delage, Ellertson and Dollander are all in the Lotto squad just because they needed to be there. Other people had injuries. Thank you for riding straight away. There's lots of people coming in straight away at cycling.eurosport at yahoo.com. That is the address if you have any questions. We're not going to actually cover anything that isn't Paris-Roubaix related today, I'm afraid. So no questions about what we're going to be doing in the Tour de France, or what we've been eating, or what we're riding, or that sort of thing, because this is a real monument of a race. And anything you want to know about Paris-Roubaix, you've got the man next to me here to answer just about anything. Let's talk about what it's like. We've just seen the breakaway riders going through the Pavé section number 21. 21 running through Verchain-Meugre. And the breakaway going through there at about 3 minutes and 50 seconds up on the peloton. Let's just talk a little bit about pavé riding in general. Now, I suggested an article to a magazine some time ago, which they dutifully went off and got done, about actually riding pavé, exactly what different types of pavé there are. And there's all sorts of different cobblestones around France. They're not all the same, as you would expect. They were to be different, but the pavé on the Paris-Roubaix, Sean, do they vary much between beginning section and end section? And if they do, I mean, how do you approach these sections?
Well, of course, there's a big difference in, in sections. Some sections are quite good and not really the bad pavé, as they say, where some of the roads are really really bad, and a lot of holes, which is the danger. Some of these roads that we go on today, it's the farmers who use them to get to their field, so they're in a very poor state, and that is the danger when you're riding along in the bunch or in the tail end of a group, as we have here with our breakaway. You always have to be, alert. You always have to watch out what's coming up ahead, because if you take your mind off and not concentrate for a moment, you can you can get a very bad hole in the cobblestones and you puncture, and that takes a bit of energy to get back. So it's a race where you need much more concentration than you would in the other classic races, like the Ardennes Classics, where the roads are very good. So it's it's a race where you always have to be on the watch out and always very much alert. And we see there on the breakaway out front, the riders were riding on the side of the road a lot, and that tells us it is very dry. It's quite hard on the side, and any little thing at all helps if you can just ride on a smoother section, and even riding on the grass and on the muddy section. But when it's dried out, you can roll along quite easily. Where if there's been a lot of rain over the past while, then it's more difficult. And certainly today it looks quite dry there on the side of the cobble sections.
So how do you approach physically riding these sections? I mean, do you attack them? Do riders have different techniques? I mean, do you go hard at them? I presume the slower you go, as if anybody's ridden any pavé or any cobblestones, the slower you go, the bouncier it is. It's a case of just keeping a rolling rhythm up. You see one of the Lamprey riders on the left-hand side just trying to get as smooth a ride as possible. She's already feeling the heat here on this section. This has a 3-star rating. They go right the way up to 5 for whichever is the nastiest section. But the Lamprey rider running through there is Angelo Furlan. How do you do it? Do you attack them? Do you have to keep a rolling rhythm going up? And as the race goes on, I presume you just get faster and faster over them.
Yes, well, it's amazing how fast they get in the final, and you have to ride all the cobblestones at quite a good rate. If you ride real slow, well, then you get bounced around quite a lot, and it's actually more difficult. So you need quite a good pace to get across them, but you need the power also, and that's I think that's the most important thing, to have the power to be able to push a big gear across the cobbles. And the big specialists, big strong riders, when you look at the likes of Boonen and Wouter, big powerful riders, and that's what you have to be. But you also have to be able to ride across the cobblestones, and you know, it's a technique which I suppose you can develop that, you can practice to do it. But the Belgians, of course, you know, they're so used to it from the day they start riding a three-wheel bicycle. You know, they ride on the cobble sections in Belgium, so you know it's natural to them. Where for other riders, you know, who are not from a country where they have the cobble sections or the cobble roads, you have to learn. And certainly in my case, it took me quite a number of years to learn how to ride. Certainly, you know, Tour of Flanders and Paris Roubaix.
Well, they call it pavé in France. What do they call them in Belgium?
Steenen.
There we go. Oh, that's a big problem. You see just one of the bidons, one of the water bottles just popping out there. That can be a problem. If you hit that and it's got wet at all, you can be down. But conditions today, well, they've managed. You can see just some of the water hanging around on the left-hand side, very, very rutted on the left-hand side of your shot, right-hand side of the road. They're picking the line through the middle. And can you see, like, just the gaps between each cobbled set there? Filled with grass, some of these, and it's Johan van Summeren who's leading the way across section 21 there. This is the section number 20 for our breakaway riders. Going through Quinziato, 2.5 kilometers, a third, three-star rating this one gets. The 5-star ratings, by the way, are the Arenberg Forest, as you would expect, Cervelo, which comes at 211 kilometers, and then finally Carrefour de l'Arbre at 242.5 kilometers. They have 5-star ratings as being really nasty bits of work. And there's a couple of 4-stars thrown in there. Towards the back end as well, you get 3 4-stars and a 5-star. Now, bear a thought for that cameraman at the front there. This goes to show just how good these guys are. Now, they're riding, I think, 650 Beamers, actually, off-roaders. But that man is hanging over the back of the bike, and he's got the camera virtually on the ground. If his motorcycle pilot gets it wrong and goes into a little rut, he will smash the bottom of that camera to bits. But bear in mind, for some of them, this looks like one of the riders from Case de Pan at the front. Incidentally, Oscar Pereiro, you may have seen, at the side of the road handing up bottles to his teammates. So Pereiro making a little bit of a trip here, just to support his buddies. I think the pace looks to be upping just a little bit amongst the peloton. They've let the group go away to about 4 minutes. The group is Weylandt from Quick-Step, Klostergaard from Saxo Bank, Furlan from Lamprey, Koza of Garmin, Henderson of Columbia, Alfredo and Salzberger from Francis de Jeux. That's Wesley Salzberger, by the way, not Bernie, his brother. Jus Postuma from Rabobank, Carnarvon from Milram, Chanel from the Bouygues Telecom squad, and Andreas Klier from Cervelo. This is the exit of 21. 3:35 now is the gap, so it has come down just a little bit. Thanks for all the questions and comments straight away. So, oh, thank you very much, by the way, to Lionel Burney of Cycle Sport and Cycling Weekly, who's just corrected me on the subject of Bernardino. Apparently he rode it twice. I only thought he rode it the once, but he did defend it apparently the following year and came 9th in 1982, having won it in 1981. Thanks to lots of pressure from home, but he certainly didn't like the race. He is here wearing a broad smile, mainly because he doesn't have to ride it, is probably the best thing. Now, we've got lots and lots of people asking about riding pavé. Richard Mattinson saying that our local town, which is Silloth in Cumbria, I hope that's how you pronounce it, has cobble streets. I find it really difficult to ride with any confidence, as I feel like the front wheel is sliding away all the time. What's the best tips for riding on cobblestones, Sean? I mean, not obviously racing on cobblestones, but riding in general.
Well, of course, you know, to ride over the cobblestones, you have to leave the bike, leave it, you know, make its own way to a certain extent. If you try and, you know, be very, very tense on the bike, it's certainly more difficult. And, you know, the shock coming from the cobblestones, coming from the road, it goes right through the body. So you have to relax, and it's something, if you cannot relax, you know, riding over the cobblestones, certainly in a Roubaix or a Tour of Flanders, you have to be able to do that, relax quite a bit and leave the bike, you know, find its own way to a certain extent. That is certainly the way to do it. And I think, you know, for people who are not used to riding the cobblestones, you know, just they're not able to do that. They're a little bit scared of, you know, sliding off, and the front of the bike, maybe they feel it has moving a bit too much, and it is difficult to ride over the cobblestones in that situation.
Into section 20 for the peloton. Some of the BMC boys suffering a little bit on the back here. That's the black and white jerseys right at the back here. My apologies, I've got Michael Elitzin confused with Farazan, who is the man who was called up. Yeah, Sean nodding to me, but there we are. He's certainly, Michael Elitzin has been called up in this particular case from another race where he was already covering for somebody who was ill. Pushing along in the front are Liquigas now. We'll go through some of the potential favourites in just a minute, but I know this is a question we're going to get all the time, so we'll tackle it now, and we'll probably tackle it 2 or 3 times during the course of today's race. Equipment, well, are they riding anything different? There was a time back in about the early 1990s, late 80s, early 1990s, where there was lots of experiments done on best frame materials. A lot of titanium was used. Rock shocks provided suspension, forks, and all sorts of stuff being used to try and make the ride a little bit better. There are still differences. I think far less. Whoops. Hayden Ralston, I think that is, dropping a bottle. There are differences in a lot of the bikes that are being used here. The main difference, I'd say, Sean, here was sometimes the different teams are using different frames. In the case of Cervelo, for example, they're using the R3 frame, which is a little bit more comfortable, I think, than their usual S-series frames for this sort of stuff. But the main difference here, wheels and tyres.
Yes, well, it's definitely the wheels and tyres, and you know, we looked at a lot of that stuff this morning, yesterday, and you know, the rims, just the normal basic flat rim is the most popular. Certainly, I think 90% of the bunch are using those, and the Paris Roubaix tyres. There is a difference, you know, 24, 25, 27s even, which I think it's a very, very heavy tyre to push. When you consider, like, there's almost 260 kilometres here, you have 53 kilometres of cobblestones, but you know, on the good road, the Tom Macadam road, I think that tyre is going to, you know, you're going to pay the price of that in the end, dragging that around all day.
I'll tell you what, we were very, very surprised actually that so many of the teams are running 27mm tyres. This team is not running 27mm tyres. Sean was mentioning normal box section aluminium rims seem to be the popular choice of everybody here. There's a little bit more flex and a little bit more give, but they're also super strong when you build them up. They're building up about the 32 crossings on the spokes, 32 spokes per wheel for the back, maybe 28 for the front, but some of them are going for 32 at the front as well. By far and away the most popular rim. There's be some teams out here that won't want me mentioning their names. Some of them are covered up with other stickers. By far and away the most popular rim are Ambrosio rims. They seem to be built up by, I would say, 90% of the teams that are using those aluminium box section rims. Tyres ranging from, well, some unbranded tyres on the Saxo Bank team, but they look pretty meaty. They're 27mm. They look very sticky. Big balloon jobs, but Corsa Evos, part of the Corsa Evos, the Vittoria tyres going up to 27mm section as well. They're using some riders using 25s. The Francis de Jure squad are using Hutchinson tubeless tyres at 25mm section on Dura-Race rims, because Dura-Race make a rim that you can take those tyres on, and not that many running anything less than 24mm. And as I say, an awful lot running 27 across there. As far as gearing goes, well, there's a whole massive spread of gearing. It depends on, I guess, how you feel on the pave, but the big strong guys are running a 53 outer chainring, and the inner chainring is a 46. So Mascant and Boonen, the big strong men, are running a 53-46 and through to a 21 on the back, so 12-21 or 11-21 on the back. A lot of bikes being chosen, the frames being chosen, so you can have not an integrated seat post either. Just gives a little bit more flex, and you can alter the position just a little bit if you want to. Right, we'll take a short commercial break with Liquigas doing the job on the front of just trying to cut down the gap to our 11 breakaway men. Welcome back. It's the 107th Paris Roubaix Two gaps in the history, really. One for the First World War, one for the Second World War. Although it did start again in 1943, having stopped in 1939. But a big gap right the way through the First World War, finishing in 1914. Charles Cropelin was the winner in 1914, and Henri Pellissier came back in 1919 to win. Thanks for those people who tried to answer the question on the 5 Dutchmen who won. Just been having a good look. Matthew Lysack, is that how you pronounce your name? Lysack? Probably, I should imagine. Not quite right, I'm afraid. We've got one wrong in there. But certainly another couple of people have got it right. We'll tell you the answer now. The Dutchmen were 1964, Peter Post. 1967, Jan Janssen. 1982, Jan Ras. 83, Henny Kuiper. 2001 was Service Kanavan. And can you mention the other one? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There they are. The only one who's come close from a nation not that far away was François Faber, the Luxembourger, in 1913. So 5 Dutchmen winning: Post, Janssen, Ras, Kuiper and Kanavan. And Service Kanavan is the man in the breakaway. He's riding a cross bike, by the way. I think he's the only guy I saw, not that it's, you know, angry or anything, cyclocross bike. It's the only one I saw this morning. There was a time when quite a few riders were riding them, but I haven't seen anybody else riding them today. But Service Kanavan seems to have made a habit of riding them. I know Roger Hammond has ridden them in the past, but doesn't seem to be riding one today. Haven't seen him on one when they wheeled it out of the Cervelo bus this morning. It's all right. Lionel Burney riding in just to correct my mistakes. No problem at all. The self-described nerd, which I'm not even going to make a comment on that, but appreciate all your corrections and comments. Thank you very much indeed. Going back to Matthew Lysack, though, he said Andre Schmill won on suspension forks. How come nobody else has? Now, I've got a feeling that, in fact, Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle won in 1992 when he was riding for Z on RockShox suspension forks. And actually, we were talking about, as we talk about equipment, you actually rode on the RockShox, trying them out. And what was the opinion there?
Well, of course, in that time, a lot of the riders were using the suspension forks, and you know, it was a help on the cobble sections. But again, you have a lot of road where it's really difficult, you know, to keep the bike, keep the momentum going with the suspension forks. And I certainly found that out when I did ride around that time as well. And you know, I don't think it was a good idea. And I think the answer to that is, well, you know, it lasted for 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years, and then they were just totally gone once again. And that tells us, you know, the advantage over the cobblestones was, you know, with the suspension forks, it was great, but still, when you have, you know, 200 kilometers plus to ride on the normal road, it was really difficult to keep it. And it added quite a lot of weight as well. At that time, they were quite heavy, and you know, it just wasn't a runner. And you know, the 3 or 4 year period, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, it's the riding on the road, isn't it, really? They're completely dead, even if you could lock them out. You know, well, as I think that they did actually experiment with trying to lock them out for road riding before they tried locking them out on mountain bikes. But even so, there's such a dead feel from them. Nearly everybody's bikes in the peloton are carbon here, except for the man that you've just seen in your shot there. I think was that Grosinen, but the Skill Shimano riders riding Scandium frames, they bounce around a bit on these cobblestones. A lot of teams still going with double width handlebar tape, which gives them a little bit of cushioning. But it's the bigger tires and the flex in the rims that gives them a little bit more feeling, and yet still gives them a little bit more cushioning on the pavé. 27 sections of pavé, starting off with Troisville after 98 kilometers, finishing with the, well, short section into Roubaix itself, which is a bit odd, actually. There's a cobbled section in a central aisle down the middle of a dual carriageway, or 2 roads, actually. It's the sort of central island in the middle, and they've got cobblestones running down the middle of it. So just to add an extra bit in, they funnel everybody into that for about 0.8 of a kilometre and out the other side, and then you swing hard right into the Roubaix Velodrome. And we are sitting actually in the Roubaix Velodrome in the open air. Our German colleagues next to us on the right-hand side of us, Paul Sherman and Phil Liggett. There are some very interesting characters in the commentary box today. Yesterday we were sitting having a bit of a drink after we'd finished looking at the team presentation, and Sean was getting all the attention until somebody else walked in and they all walked off, which is a bit of a shame for Sean. But Alessandro Ballan, the world champion, coming in, sitting down, having an orange juice with some of his friends. He's actually working for Rai Sport, the Italian channel. His brother is actually just walking in front of us, is Alessandro Ballan's brother. And a few riders beginning to push on now. I think that was Daniel Napolitano from Katusha. This is Sylvain Chavanel. And Chavanel must be, well, the French are just going mad for this chap at the moment. They are thinking, well, he really could do something today. I don't know about that. Let's move on to that topic then, Sean, of particular favourites, guys who could do really well today. There's a whole fistful of them, but this is the sort of race that can pull up any number of favourites, but also can throw up any sort of wild cards as well if you manage to get into a break and stay there. It would have been the case if there had been a raging tailwind, I reckon, that a whole load of guys could have gone off, but I don't think it's going to be the case today. But things are livening up at the front here. Now, the reason we haven't answered the question about favourites is because as soon as I said that, in the background we heard our gallery back in Paris saying, oh, we're going to go for a commercial break in a minute. So there's no point even tackling that subject till we come back. But certainly things getting a little bit more lively here, Sean, now.
Yes, certainly are, and we can see you know, the who's going to take up the chase. That is the big question, because I suppose when you look at the favourites, of course the Quick Step are the big favourites here. The team is very solid, a lot of riders who can, you know, ride very well in this race, and normally there should be a number of them in the final, as we see last week in the Tour of Flanders. And immediately when you look at this breakaway, this 11-man breakaway, they had Martin Weylandt from the Quick Step team, the Belgian rider, and you know, they were covering themselves, putting a rider up there, so they do not have to do the riding as we get into this race. And it seems to be the situation that they're controlling it here in the bunch. They're certainly not doing the riding, and we see Chavanel going away in a group of 5 or 6 riders there. So you know, they're certainly working the tactic where they're going to play the riders, because they have quite a few of, you know, possible winners in this race.
Welcome back. 104 kilometres still to go here in the 107th Paris Roubaix race. Isn't it great? Fantastic. We've got big coverage on Eurosport this year, which is brilliant to know. Glad you could join us here live. It's a little bit more overcast than it was an hour or so ago, and the wind is getting up just a little bit. I think looking a bit more like a tailwind coming, is no headwind coming into the final few kilometres, but nothing much, just a very light breeze at the moment. We're going to talk about weather and wind conditions in just a second, at tactics, but let's talk about favourites at the moment. You've been studying L'Equipe in the French papers today, Sean. What have they got to say? Who do they fancy for the win today?
Well, of course, Tom Boonen is the big favourite, and you know, we've talked about that a lot over the last 2 days. Certainly, you know, he's the man who I think has the advantage, but you know, you have to get on a good day first of all, because everybody can have a bad day. Not having bad luck, I suppose, is so important as well, to stay out of trouble at the important times. But Boonen, the big favourite, Wouter, after his performance last year, he's up there. Pozzato, another one which was very much in the forefront last week. Flecha, who's been in this race and a lot of the classics, up there very much to the fore in the last number of years, and seemed to be in quite good form last week once again. And then Chavanel, of course, the third man, I suppose, from the Quick Step team, who is, you know, riding very well. He showed that in the Tour of Flanders last week also. And then we have the Silence-Lotto rider Leif, Hoste, who last week was riding quite well. He struggled, as I talked about earlier, maybe finding form in the earlier part of the season, but certainly looked to be on better shape last week. So if he can improve again, I think you know, you cannot count him out. Hincapi, who was riding quite well, who we talked with yesterday, and he felt, you know, that he was in good shape. But you know, he's been up there many times and never just managed to pull it off. But certainly, you know, for me, I think he's the one who you cannot count out. Hushovd, who also was riding very well, but he said this morning that he was tired and he didn't feel so well. But I think on the performance of last week, he should be able to do something here today. Has he got the experience? That is the big question. And then you go further down, Kurt-Asle, of course, Maskant, Barzenhagen, who did very well in Ghent-Wevelgem and won that one.
Yeah,
it should be interesting to see how will he get through. And Guesdon, the French rider who won it a number of years ago, Burkhardt, Breschel, like they're all favourites, and it depends on how the race develops in the end. And but I think if it really goes down to man against man in the final, well then the likes of Boonen, Wouter, Pozzato, they're the ones who are always difficult to beat. But there could be a lot of tactics, and we've seen it before a number of years ago with the CSC riders, with O'Grady and Kurt-Asle. They put it up to the Quick Step team and they pulled off the victories because they had a few men who could put up the road in the breakaways, and we could see something like that once again today, because everybody and everybody's talking about who can beat the Quick Step team here.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, they were so well, they had such strength in depth in the Tour of Flanders. They had 3 men who could have ridden away and won it, depending on how the situation had unfolded. Now, while we talk about Quick Step, it has been reported, hasn't it, on the continent, that Tom Boonen was not in the least bit happy that Stein de Volder went off and won the Tour of Flanders. I mean, do you think that's just speculation? Do you think it's rumour, or do you think there's something in it?
Well, certainly the press, they talked about a lot during the week that de Volder went in the attack, and Boonen did not seem to be happy because he went after Chavanel. But sometimes the Belgian press are very good at that. They can create rivalry between riders in the same team as they're doing here with the Quick Step men. So it's difficult to know. And then it was also said that Boonen was talking with Pozzato and he was asking Pozzato to ride after de Volder. I'm not sure if that is true. It's difficult to know, but certainly I think today, if we get into the last 30 kilometres and we have a number of Quick Step riders there, if we have 3 riders, for example, on the Quick Step, I could see them having to work for Boonen a bit more today, and give him the opportunity maybe to have a go at it in the last 25, 30 kilometres of this one.
Surely Tom Boonen, I mean, he's got to try and do something today. His whole season must be this hangs on this race now.
Well, certainly there's certainly much more pressure on today on Boonen, because he hasn't won a Classic yet this year. And if you look at his results in the beginning of the season, he's won some races, but certainly not as good as last year. And I think there's a lot of pressure on today, and if he could win here today, it would make his beginning of season an excellent one, and an excellent one for the Quick Step team. So certainly I think the tactic within the Quick Step team will be, if we get into the last 25, 30 kilometres and we have a number of men there, we have to try and get going into a winning position. But it's easier said than done, because it depends on the other teams, what way they are riding, how many men they have up front, and that could always play into the hands of the second row men. Like if Chavanel in the team, we could see him maybe going away in a group, and a group that would stay away to contest the final sprint here on the track in Roubaix.
This is the 18th section, or they count down from 27 to 1, so this is section 18. Going after 156 kilometres, Tabarui, 2.5 kilometres in length, and that's what gives its 4-star rating here for difficulty. It's pretty rough too, this one as well, and you can see as it dries out, it's starting to get a little bit dusty. This is what we've seen over the last few years. This is Alfredo, who was in the breakaway, is now dropping back to the main peloton, which is about 3 minutes down on our breakaway of 10 riders now, as Alfredo has come out of that break. Wesley Salzberger from Francis de Jure is still in there. And right at the back of the breakaway was Wouter Weylandt from the Quick Step squad, just sitting in there and not really worrying too much. The man in the Norwegian champions jersey is Kurt-Asle Arvesen, just sitting at the front here. It's the first time we've seen the Saxo boys at the front, just dictating the pace. Liquigas did something. There's another man who you could look at, and certainly on current form, is Manuel Quinziato, who I think not so much got caught out, but I mean, there was no way that a lot of riders could compete with 3 possible contenders from Quick Step in the Tour of Flanders. Manuel Quinziato looking in good form the other day in the Tour of Flanders, dropping off the back here from the Landbau Credit Colnago squad. I think in fact he's featured on the posters for this year's Paris Roubaix as David Boucher, the Frenchman. who was in a break last year, if I remember rightly, and usually likes to get out in a break. Now, that's a good shot. Now, you can see those tyres that we're talking about, 27 mil and very deep, almost like balloons there. We don't know who they're made by. They're unbranded tubulars onto Ambrosio rims, and you can see the bike frames from Specialized, featuring those special sections in the seat stays and in the forks to try and dampen some of the shock. So they are pretty well prepared. Saxo Bank again running Ambrosio rims. They're also somebody else from the oh dear, that's a big one. I think it just slowed down as they were trying to get some bottles, and people have plowed into the back of things. It's the first big crash we've seen. We have seen Martin Helmiger getting up from one, but a lot of people at the back are caught out. I think it's well, one of the Garmin Slipstream boys on the far right-hand side. I think it's Michael Friedman who's been caught out, and Rabobank they're coming off rather badly. Is that Langeveld? It looks like Langeveld.
Lezer.
Or Tom Lezer. Oh dear, and stuck in the grass at the moment is Sebastianino. Well, he doesn't have an awful lot, not having an awful lot of luck today, Sebastianino, and about 4 or 5 riders going down, also caught out there. Looked like Alexander Uzov and Hans Decker. Oh, more riders on the right-hand side of the road. There's Decker from Garmin Slipstream, trying to get back on, trying to get up to speed. A large number of riders there, Sean, caught out in that one.
Yes, certainly, and you know that's the Paris Roubaix. It's always a risk when you're riding on a section of cobblestones. And we see there quite a bit grass in the middle, but you know, one rider, you know, just makes a bit of a move and they touch wheels and down they go. And in Paris Roubaix, when riders fall, like it's often we see the case that there's quite a big stack of riders, and that certainly was a big one. And some of the riders came out quite badly there. We see some seem to be, you know, quite hurt.
Boucher actually catching up on Cédric Pinault now, who's been caught out by that. Tom Lisa. And I think the rider from Silence-Lotto holding his hand was Roy Sentiens as we went past him. Race radio saying that the medical car is coming up at some point, so I wouldn't be surprised if Sentiens has to have some attention to the hand. AG2R being really caught out here, Sean. There's about 4 or 5 riders at the back here who've been caught out from AG2R. That looked like Aurélien Clerc. It is Aurélien Clerc as they go into section 18, or out of section 18 here. And Aurélien Clerc was one of the guys who the French press was saying, well, you know what, if he's in good shape, he could do something today. Look at the size of those tires, like cruisers on the front here. Those big 27 mil section balloon jobs that Saxo Bank are riding. We don't know where they're made, as I say. And a lot of questions coming in of why, and I know the question was asked in Cycling Weekly this week, is one of the editorial comments, is why is everybody changing from Shimano to SRAM, losing another thing. Well, you can see the Saxo Banks at the front here have got SRAM on the front. It's well, the SRAM people are partly the Zip wheels are owned by SRAM, so it's part of a big package really. So there's nothing really difficult about that one. They had to really drop into line with American companies, American bits and pieces, so that's the way they've done it, to go with their specialized bikes and the Zip wheels. But all sorts of mixtures of bits and pieces going, and a lot of people using the new rear derailleurs, Dura-Ace rear derailleurs with old levers, Sean.
Yes, that's certainly the case. We've seen that with a number of teams, and a lot of mixture here, I suppose. When you look at the bikes here today, there's, you know, so much of a mixture between, you know, the tires, rims, also the equipment they're using. That is one we've noticed as well. So, but for a Paris Roubaix, there's always a lot of mixture with the wheels that you use, because, you know, you do not use the normal wheels which you use all through year. Let's
just get you up to date with this one. This is Martin Mascant, who must have been a bit further down than we expected him to be at this point. He's being driven back towards the back of the peloton by certainly Will Frischkorn is one of the riders. The American trying to bring back Mascant. to the back of the group there. Must have been caught out by that crash. We didn't see him being there. Michael Friedman is the other man, so Friedman wasn't one of the riders on the floor. And we know it isn't Koza because he's further up the road. So Frischkorn and Friedman working hard to bring back Martin Mascan, one of the big outside favourites, with Aurelien Clerc tacking on the end. Marcus Burkhardt on the pavement here and just nipping off again. Favours the big men here. That's a difficult move. You've got to make sure you've got enough space to get back up. People hopping on and off the pavements to try and get some advantage. That's you've got to be very, very confident there's going to be enough room so you can nip back on again. Things are beginning to hot up here, Charlotte. The quick steps, Saxo Bank, they're all getting to the front. They're trying to do a little bit and splitting things up. And that's a difficult time for Mascan. He's got two men with him, but Mascan, one of the real outside favourites. Fourth in Flanders last week. Fourth at Paris Roubaix last year, when nobody really knew he was going to do that, except Jonathan Wouters, of course, telling us, as he would do, that he knew that Mascan had it in him. But Mascan being talked about quietly by a lot of people as being a potential here, and not the best thing to happen to him. Doesn't look like he's been hurt in any way. He's certainly been held up somehow, and he needs to get back to this group and make sure he can recover and keep on there. Yes, well, of course, it's starting to heat up, as we can see here, and as you mentioned, and we're coming to the point of Arenberg. So, you know, it's in 98 kilometres to finish in Arenberg. They come onto that section at 95 kilometres, so, you know, just a little over 3 kilometres to go, and it's certainly, you know, speeding up here. And for Mascant is not a good position to be in, because he's going to get onto the rear of the bunch here, and to go to Arenberg in that position, it's not a good place to be, unless he can get back in the next 2 kilometres and make his way a bit to the front. But it seems like that they're really upping the pace in the front, and that's going to, you know, really going to be difficult for him to get back up to the front of the peloton. Well, that shows the heritage of this area, doesn't it? Paris Roubaix, Stablansky was a man who used to do well here, the Frenchman of Polish extraction, and a miner as well. And right-hand man of Jacques Anquetil. They're not working anymore, those mine heads. They're just there preserved to show the heritage of the area. This we're coming now into the Arenberg forest. This is the real opener of hostilities, for want of anything else. This is horrible. Sean, take us through this from this point. Well, it's one of the worst sections, and certainly, you know, a long section. So it's a section as well that you have, you know, a big amount of riders still in the bunch, as we see there, and that always makes it difficult. It's like the end of a race. It's the same as going for a sprint finish to get onto this section of cobbles in Arenberg, and you arrive at such a rate, 55, 60 kilometers per hour. It's very, very dangerous, as you can see here. But if you're on a break up front, as we see our breakaway, it's a great position to be in, because you get a bit of time to get over the cobblestones. There's a little bit more room with 10 or 11 riders up front, but in the bunch it's going to be hectic, and we will see in a moment it will be just an all-out sprint to get onto this section of cobbles in a good position in the top 10 or 15 riders, and that's what all the favourites will be trying to do, and their teammates will be trying to get them into good positions for that. Is it an area where you could really make a difference to the pattern of the race here if you attack hard, if your team attacks hard at the front of this and gets into this section early on? We're seeing it struggling towards the back here. Greg Henderson just a little bit. Can you make a massive difference to the outcome of the race on this section? Yes, it can be a very vital section here, because if there's a group getaway of 20, 25 riders and they start riding up front and you're not in there, well, then it's so difficult to get back, and that's what all the big favourites are afraid of, that there will be action here and that a group can go away, and you know, if you're not in with that group, well, then you could, you know, maybe out of a chance of getting a result in this race. So, you know, everybody is really nervous about getting across this one, and it's such a difficult section, a long section, but also very, very poor quality at the cobblestone, very, very rough, and you know, everybody is really nervous, as we can see here. The bunch is going on at a very fast rate to get onto this section. Yeah, the pace has really been up now as they're coming up towards the Arenberg forest. There it is ahead of you. You can see they're racing towards it. They'll be desperate to get onto it. You saw halfway along, in fact, on the right-hand side of the road, mechanics holding wheels high up in the air so that they can, they'll be there if anything happens along this. This is exactly what Paris Roubaix is about. If you're joining us now, This is, oh, and things already bouncing. That's just a flag bouncing out there. Thank goodness for that. There must be some heart-stopping moments when you see things bouncing in front of you on the Arenberg Forest. Often these guys try and get over to the, or they used to try and get over into the woodlands, in fact, if the weather was so bad, and ride along where a lot of these spectators are now. But they are flat out, all lined out here. A bit on, getting flung to the side, just trying to keep it out of the way. Johan Museo had a massive crash here and broke his leg so badly, and almost lost his leg, actually, from the result of the blood poisoning that came on with this, the injury here. There's a big crash, look, there's a crash halfway down, I think, already, and people trying to get out of the way of that. All over the place. Oh, another one on the right-hand side. They're coming down like flies here. Right in the middle is a big, big crash. And all sorts of people all over the place. Well, let's hope that, I think somebody's clipped the barrier there. This is the point. They're just getting bounced around all over the place. We don't know, of course, who it is at the moment. It looked like one of the Landbau-credited boys was down on the floor. And some people getting in the way. It's holding up loads of people at the back. This is a disaster for anybody who gets held up at the back. It's Steve Morabito, the Swiss rider, with Astana, just trying to pick his way through. And one of the, I think it's Rick Flint's from... Oh, it's Hayden Ralston, is it, who's gone down? Hayden Ralston is one of them who's just gone down, and Vincenti Reines, that we've just seen, getting up there. Oh, that is so difficult. Well, I mean, at least he's up, Sean, and there's no broken bones as far as we can see here. Oh, look at the decimation here amongst people.
Yes, well, it's a classic in the Arenberg section. You know, we always see those crashes, and we see Boonen there on the front pulling it along, and you know, you have to ride up front, and if you can get on the front of the group and keep the pace really high, it's, you know, a safe position, and it's the best position to be. Just ride it through and then see as you get out the other end what's position, what's after happening, what damage is done. But certainly, like the riders that fall, even if you have not a bit an injury, you know, you could have a long chase. As I mentioned earlier, if a group goes ahead here of 20-30 riders up front, you're going to have a long chase, and you pay for those, you know, efforts later on this race.
Well, you can see Boonen is right towards the front. You can see Heinrich Haussler going through there as well, about 20 back on Boonen. Just look at the string. Way out all over the place, bouncing around all over this, trying to get the best possible line, and they're hammering on at the front of Saxo Bank now. Our breakaway group have already just left. They've done the sharp left-hander getting out of the Arenberg Forest. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, about 20 riders here. 1, 2, 3, 4 from Cervelo here in this group. Fifth Cervelo rider trying to come across. That looks like Johan von Summeren trying to get onto the back of this group. And one going up on the far left-hand side. It looks like Heinrich Haussler coming to the front and pushing on, wanting to make a difference, wanting to have a go at this point. Now, will the big favourites be looking at him? Because Boonen is a little bit further back. He was second in this string of riders, and Haussler's taking a flyer here, Sean.
Yes, well, certainly it looks like Haussler there, and seemed to be, you know, very easy along the section there, riding away from everybody else. Again, you know, it's really not the time to go in the attack. You have to follow this group, and we talked about Haussler yesterday, you know, in very good form, but some of the tactic errors that he makes are very noticeable. And once again here, every little bit on the front that you ride, you could pay for it in the end. But you know, if he just holds up here and waits for the rest to come up, certainly it's not a place where you can go on and, you know, ride on your own for a number of kilometres. And he's just looking about to see what damage is done behind.
I think so. Looks as though he's just testing a feel to see if anybody wants to come over and do things. It's a good shot of the Ergo Sum Pro bars that they're using there. Very shallow drop on them. And but I tell you what, I tried some during the Paris-Nice. Tried one of the Cervelo bikes with those bars on there. Incredibly comfortable. I'm thinking of putting them on the next bike I'm getting from Brian Rourke, because they are incredibly comfortable. Now beginning to push along. There's Big George Hincapie going through this shot. Just trying to get it together. So Roger Hammond. Filippo Pozzato up towards the front as well. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the Cervelos once again up to the fore in this little group. Are they going to sit up and wait for anybody else to come back to them? This is Tom Boonen right at the back, wearing the number 1 as last year's winner. On the left-hand side of the shot from Saxo Bank is Matti Breschel. Now, he's the very, very first man we met yesterday when we arrived in Compiègne. Parked up to have a look at some of the bikes from Saxo Bank, and there he was. I think he's looking pretty good. He's coming to form in the right time, Sean. We haven't mentioned him. Let's talk about some of the second string favourites, shall we say. There are people who could do things like Matti Breschel, like Quinziato. Who else do you think's got an outside chance here? Look, still more people suffering in the Araberg. Looks like they're just pushing the bike, trying to get wait for the car to come up. That's a dreadful time. That's they're going to be just by themselves now for the rest of the day. Oh, what a terrible shame. Who are the outside favourites in your estimation?
Well, I think as we go on in the race, and if we look at the position at the moment, you know, the outside favourites is going to be a bit more difficult because we see the way the race is developing at the moment. You know, when you talk yesterday and this morning before the start, the outside favourites, if they can get into a break, an earlier break, and get along, get a big advantage and maybe get up front, and even if they get caught later by the big favourites, then you can talk about an outside favourite. But now, as we see here, a lot of the big favourites coming to the fore, and I think for an outside favourite it's going to be more difficult in the situation we are now. But you know, as you mentioned, there's always a possibility if we come to the last 30 kilometres and there's quite a few teams with number of riders up there, then we could see him playing the tactic game, riders going in the attack. In that case, we might see one of the second string of favourites doing something, but it looks like that, you know, we're going to see the big names to the fore now, because the way we're riding at the moment and the way they have come through the Rabobank forest, and the breakaway hasn't got any major advantage to cause any problems. But Saxo Bank, we can see here quite a number of riders, Cervelo quite a few here, so it's going to get quite interesting, because it's not going to be as easy for the quick steps. Last week we see when we came to the critical point, I think, you know, the quick steps had quite an advantage with a number of riders up front, but here it's been put up to them for the moment in this race, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, what the outcome will be as we get closer to the finish. If we have a lot of riders from different teams, then we could see that the tactic game being played.
7 kilometres to go for these guys to get to the next section of cobblestones, which is at Honang. And some of the big guys coming towards. There's Jeremy Hunt from the Cervelo team in this group here. Thor Hushovd just getting some food down his neck. Heinrich Haussler just going past us. Roger Hammond. That's a strong group they've got in here. Look, Gabriel Rasch, I think it is, also up towards the front. Boonen. Flecha is in this group as well from Rabobank. There's some big names in here. The teams who've done best getting into this group are Quickstep. They've got, I think, 3 men in this group, but also Cervelo got 5. I think a couple in here from Francis Dujour as well. I thought I saw Guesdon at some point in this group in Casquette. And that'll be great for him. Paturovic is also into the group as well, and just chasing on to the back here, Standevolde getting in behind Sylvain Chavanel. So 2 big teams in this group now. De Volder, winner of the Tour of Flanders last week. Is he a contender today? Will Quickstep allow him to be a contender, Sean? I mean, politically, would it be better for them to have Boonen on the victors' rostrum?
Well, certainly it would be better. I think if we get into a situation where it's possible that they can get Boonen to take the victory here, they will certainly, you know, go with that tactic. But you know, it's not as easy, because if you have a lot of riders in the final and a lot of teams present, well, then it's not as easy, you know, to work the tactic in that way. So, you know, first of all, they will wait and see who they have got in the leading group as we get closer to the finish, the last 30 kilometres, the last 25 kilometres. And if, you know, there's a lot of teams present, and now, as you know, we talked about there, Cervelo, you know, quite a number of riders here at the moment. Saxo Bank also quite a few riders. It's, you know, it's going to be, you know, maybe man against man, and that certainly could be a more difficult situation for Boonen, because when you're the favourite, you go in the attack, you're going to have a lot of riders marking you immediately.
some of the big favourites not particularly keen to come to do some work straight away, and Jeremy Hunt just looking over his shoulder saying, hey, come on guys, come and get up here. There is Frederic Guesdon right in the middle, won the race way back in, I think it was 97 actually now that he won the race. Let me just double check that. Yep, it was 1997. Yeah, I tell you what, if he was to win today, which is highly unlikely, I would have thought, but he is going well, I've got to say. But if Frederic Guesdon was to win today, they would undoubtedly be, and I don't think there'll be anybody, I think Lionel will probably tell me if I was wrong, but I'm pretty certain that he would be the man with the biggest gap between wins ever. Frederic Guesdon, what is he now, 37, 38, Guesdon, do you think?
38, I think.
38, yep. Leif Hoste on the back here. He's the only man in this group to have made this group from Silence-Lotto that I can tell at the moment. Hincapie is in here. There are 5 Cervelo riders, including Hushovd, Haussler, and Hammond. And right at the front is Fabian Cancellara, we've seen. Kurt-Asle Arvidsson has been shot out the back somewhere. Matti Breschel has got through to this group as well, which is good. So this is beginning to look like a very fearsome group of favourites here. Well, we're going to take another commercial break. We had about 5 to go, I think. So this will be 4 after this one. Hopefully we'll get them all over fairly soon. Back live then with the group that is chasing down the now 9 breakaway riders, because Wouter Weylandt has come back to this group. So Quick-Step have an extra man. You could see him from the sort of flowing golden locks, or dyed golden locks if you want. The other man from Rabobank here is Tom Pilas, by the way. It looks like 1, 2, 3 back in your shot there. Fabian Cancellara in the middle of this group. There's 5 riders from Cervelo in this group: Hammond, Haussler, Hunt, Hushovd, and Rasch. Weylandt, I think, is being, I think Wouter Weylandt may be being brought back, but Martin Weylandt has definitely got into the group. So they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 men within the top 2 groups. And Stan de Volder had to work pretty hard, actually, to get back on the group. Had Sylvain Chavanel just ahead of him. Chavanel in super form. Is Chavanel an outside possibility, or will they even allow that?
Yes, well, certainly Chavanel. He's in the shape. He's capable of, doing the results here. And again, if it comes down to the final, where there's a little bit of a tactic played from all the big teams here who we have up in front, certainly Chavanel could be the one who could, come out most from that, come out the best. And that is, going to be the situation. If we have a lot of riders and a lot of teams present, they're definitely going to go in the attack. Certainly they're not going to keep on riding here all the way to the track in Roubaix with the likes of Tom Boonen in the group, because they know in the sprint he's going to be, an impossible one to beat. So, sure, if this group stays away and they come to the last 25-30 kilometres, there's going to be a lot of riders who are going to try go in the attack.
4 riders for Quick-Step in the group then at the moment. It's Boonen, Chavanel, de Volder, and Weylandt. Martin Weylandt, as opposed to Wouter Weylandt, who is up ahead and I think will be called back fairly shortly. 4 of the Saxo Bank riders in here: Fabian Cancellara, Matti Breschel, Matt Goss, Marcus Lundqvist also in that front group. Well, they're chasing hard to get back on. George Hincapie is by himself from Columbia High Road. 5 of the riders led out by Jeremy Hunt here at the front, with Heinrich Haussler from Cervelo. Cervelo got Hammond, Hunt, Haussler, Hushovd, and Rasch right in the front. All the H's plus a Norwegian. Another Norwegian, should I say. 2 Norwegians, Rasch and Hushovd. But it looks as though Sean may have been just a bit of leg testing going on here. They've not really pushing super hard, and the rest of the group seem to be coming back to them.
Yes, well, if the situation is, we can see the Cervelos are certainly interested in pushing this one on, but not getting a lot of support from quite a number of riders here. And there's over 20 riders, 25 riders maybe in that group of Boonen, and if you have a lot of riders tagging on the rear, well, you cannot give it 100%, because you will pay the price later. And as we can see, there's certainly a group going to come back and join up with this group of Boonen and Cancellara.
spectator will have to get out of the way pretty hard. Oh, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 quick steps on the front here. Now, who's missed the group then? Now, maybe the camera angles we're giving, or the camera shots we're giving us, Cancellara and, Chavanel and De Volder as being in the full chasing onto the front group. Maybe they're a bit further behind than we anticipated, Sean. And in fact, as they come into 16, section 16, this is a long one. It's not that difficult in terms of the set. The cobble sets are a lot closer together, not so many big gaps between them. But it looks to me as though perhaps we misjudged that, and that De Volder and Chavanel have got back on now.
Yes, that's definitely the case. We see the 4 riders from quick step chasing there to get back into that group of Boonen, and it certainly, you know, looks like that it was Chavanel and De Volder who were just that little bit off that group of Tom Boonen, and you know, they have you know, ridden to get back here, and that's what they've got to do, because you know, again, the Cervelo team, quite a number of riders, too many riders up front for comfort, and the quick steps, you know, have just got to, you know, pull back here and get their men up front.
Well, immediately coming to the front now are the riders from Columbia High Road, because they missed out on that break. It was only George Hincapie who was in there just covering all the moves, and he could have done with some extra people, so he'll be very pleased that his guys have gone back and come straight to the front. They've got 4 guys there now working for Hincapie. It's all for Hincapie in the squad. Hincapie got it close, but no cigar. I've got a feeling, personally, I don't think he's ever going to do it. But I mean, he won't thank me for saying that. But he just seems to be, bad luck seems to dog him, or he just seems to be slightly in the wrong place. And when he gets to, although he's a good sprinter, he's got to the velodrome with better sprinters in the past, which is very unfortunate. If you're joining us live here, this is the 107th Paris Roubaix race, 259.5 kilometers. The weather pretty good, actually. It rained overnight. It's dried out now. It's kept the dust down, so you get excellent pictures here. And they're going into section 16. Well, they are in section 16, 3.7 kilometers. And very good afternoon, especially to my eldest son, Joseph, who I know is watching this with his grandma. And I'll tell you what, he's been out on the bike every day in a week. Gave me a right kicking last week, which is not fair because he's only 13, but enjoy it back there. And anybody else who's watching with fathers, sons and daughters, this is the real hard man's classic. We were talking about tactics a little bit earlier, Sean, but what about the weather here? I mean, it plays a huge part, but today the weather has been pretty kind on them. How much does the wind affect them here?
Well, the wind certainly, it's difficult if you have a side wind on the cobble sections, because there is no shelter. As we talked about earlier, the riders really ride on the side to get, you know, the most comfortable ride across the cobbles, and to, you know, to ride a little bit on the grass. And if they're doing that, well, then you get no shelter at all. So it definitely makes it a bit more difficult. And certainly the final, after, you know, being over 50 kilometers of cobbles, when you get into that last 20 kilometers, you know, everybody is getting tired, and it's just the guys with that little bit more energy who can survive up front in the leading group. The weather conditions today perfect. We had some rain last night, as you mentioned, but it's dried out very well, and it's just you know, just to keep the dust down, really, I suppose that's what it's doing. Yeah. But you know, it's perfect conditions for racing. You know, if you have rain and the cobble sections are very, very wet, it's so much more dangerous. And we haven't had a lot of big spills today, considering like the roads that they have to go over here. So I think everybody will be happy in those conditions, because the best man in the race, if you get tangled up in a crash at the wrong time, you can lose, you know, your whole possibility of winning the race here, just if you crash at the wrong moment.
Look at this. This is the nastiest bit of this section. Very, very rough. It's not so bad either side of this. And Roger Hammond leading the Cervelo riders across the dirt on the left-hand side of your screen. Either when you're riding these sections, Sean, you either ride on the crown of the road, don't you, or you try and ride in the gutter, almost somewhere where you would never normally ride, but you try and ride in the gutter off the road and get it smoother, or you're riding on the crown where you're not liable to be slipping too much and where there is as smooth as possible.
Yes, well, of course, in the middle of it, it's always that little bit better because, you know, the tracks of the cars is, you know, to the left and right, and a lot of the time the cobblestones, as we can see here, they're a little bit more broken up on the side. So if you ride right in the middle, there's always a little bit smoother section there, or totally on the side, as we can see our riders here at the moment, Bose and Hagen. That is certainly the most comfortable place to ride, but also the most dangerous for punctures, because there's always little grits, little bit of stones, as we can see here. And the risk of getting punctured is much greater when you ride on the side like that. So the centre is the safest and the best place to stay out of trouble.
Hagen, a winner in Gent-Wevelgem in the middle of the week, so obviously in super form. I'm really pleased for him, actually. I mean, he's been knocking on the door of a big win for a while, hasn't he? So, and it's good to see that he's finally managed to get one. Right at the back here, trying to chase back on the Lampre boys, Simon Spilak from Slovakia, bouncing around all over the place. And that is Chris Sutton from Garmin Slipstream. Sutton had a good, if I remember rightly, he had a good position in Paris Roubaix last year and got tailed off. But he was in the initial break, Chris Sutton. But certainly trying to fight his way back on here. There'll still be riders at the back of this group who are suffering from the big crash that came in a little earlier. 1 minute 27 seconds being pushed along at the moment by the Columbia High Road boys. I think it's Michael Barry is one of the riders up towards the front. We're going to take another commercial break with 78.2 kilometers still to go. Welcome back. We're live with the 107th Paris Roubaix. 76.9 kilometers still to go. Stijn de Volder has just had to change his bike for some reason. We didn't catch it, but he's got a new bike, and de Volder getting in behind the Commissaire's car. He's got to work his way back up. You see there's not too many cars to get through, but the former Belgian champion, road champion, and twice winner of Tour of Flanders this year and last year. I think we're going to get some shots of that coming up, but one of the Astana boys now pushing off the front. Here we go. De Volder absolutely frantic to get a new bike. And away he goes. That was a nice clean change. I think his car was probably a little bit held up, which was the reason he was worrying about it. Now, did you catch the Astana rider, Sean, who went away?
Sharp.
Michael Sharp. Yes. Now, interestingly, he was one of my outside favourites in Tour of Flanders, but there he is, not getting any further at the moment. De Volder takes on a bit on while he can get back to the rear of the peloton. And obviously a mechanical problem for De Volder, and changing a new Roubaix bike. Have you ridden those at all with the elastomers and the forks and the seat stays?
No, I have not. I have no experience in riding at all, but certainly a lot of the teams who are supplied with Specialized, they're certainly, I think most of the riders are using them in this one.
Yeah, they are. I think they all are. All the riders from Saxo Bank and all the riders from Quickstep, they've all got them. If you've got any experience of riding them over very rough conditions, I'm not talking about your local potholes, but Tour of Flanders or something like that, the Sportive, or even better, the Paris Roubaix Sportive, you can write to us at cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com. Any questions on Paris Roubaix, riding the cobbles, equipment, whatever you want to, or any comments about racing in general, as Frederic Guesdon here chasing back on for some reason as well. Guesdon, winner back in 1997 of this race, and has been in very good form, actually. Terrifically consistent professional. Wouldn't that be a turn up for the books if he managed to get away again and win this? It would certainly be the biggest gap that I can think of between winners. We're back with our lead group, and you can see there's no real standing water on the road, but it is keeping the dust down. Look at those bars bouncing around here. Well, they've got double the thickness bar tape on. Whoop, one of the Mavic motorbikes has gone over. I hope they haven't managed to clip Marcus Lundqvist. Now, I wonder if they were giving Lundqvist a wheel. I shouldn't think so. The rear wheel seems still to know. Lundqvist's wheels exactly as they were. But the Mavic service bike tipping over sideways. 5 of those things. I was coming to look at them yesterday, actually seeing how they fabricated the racks. If anybody out there fabricates racks for the back of BMWs, let me know, because I've decided, having got myself a big Beamer off-roader, after many years thinking, oh, I'm getting a bit old and soft, heated grips and all that, that's the thing for me. I thought, well, why should I be prevented from enjoying riding with bicycle as well as riding with motorcycle? So I'm going to have a rack made up to carry the bike and wheels on the back, so I can get and go around on the motorbike and still ride my bike. If anybody knows how to build those, let me know. All riders riding with a little tiny bar top brake levers as well, like you'd have on cyclocross bikes. In these sort of situations, I'm not sure they make a whole lot of difference, quite frankly. But there was certainly 3 or 4 riders from Cofidis yesterday, when we were looking at the bikes, had those fitted. As we're into section 15 now of the cobbles, definitely the pace is up now. 2.4 kilometers at Weylandt. And they're certainly turning the pedals a lot faster than they were maybe 10-15 kilometers ago. A lot of riders using 27mm section tires, not that many on carbon rims, a lot of them on aluminium box section rims. There are some Mavics around, there are the Astana boys are using Bontrager rims, but by far the rim of choice, I have to say, whether it's branded so or not, when you look very closely, are Ambrosio tubs. Hincapie, we're told, has a puncture. Here he is, George Hincapie, needing to get Edvald Boassenhagen's wheel, is he? Boassenhagen waiting for the wheel, and Hincapie, don't panic, boy, don't panic. He's having trouble getting that rear wheel out. This is a little bit of a panic here, Sean, for him. Yes,
certainly is a panic situation, and he just had the best thing to do is leave it for the mechanic, but of course the car was just a little bit further back there, and George was trying to be ready when the mechanic arrived, have the flat wheel out and just ready to slot in your new wheel. But it's certainly taken a bit more time than he would have hoped here, and he's certainly going to have a bit of a chase back on, depending on what happens up front. We see De Volder getting back after the bike change. He had quite a quick bike change, but it wasn't really going fast at the time, so it's always difficult to get back if they really start driving up front, and that is the risk, because when you're on a cobble section. But I think here at the moment we can see they're very much across the cobble section here. It tells us they're not really going anywhere near 100%, so George should be able to get back without too much of an effort.
We hope so. I thought Edvald Boassenhagen was going to offer up a wheel.
Well, he was offering the wheel,
but he didn't want to take it.
No, George said no, just the car was just there at that moment, and I suppose it was a good decision, because he has Boassenhagen to get back, and he will be a big help to him, because he's riding very well, as he said, winning the Gent-Wevelgem again during the week. So I think we should see them get him back very quickly into this leading group.
Alan R. from Scotland saying, can you tell me the story with the spectators holding the wheels over the side of the road? They weren't actually spectators, Alan, they are mechanics. This is a logistically very difficult race for the mechanics, because they have to position themselves either halfway. In the Arenberg Forest, they usually station themselves middle and end, and for most of these sections of Pave, they have themselves positioned at the end, ready if there's any problem. If you get a puncture, for example, and the car isn't right behind you, there is the possibility, nearly everybody riding on tubs, that you can keep riding with a flat tire. It's not nice, it's pretty horrible to ride on cobbles with a flat tire, but you can get to the end, and then you can get a spare wheel. That's what they're doing. They're positioned there with the wheels in the air so that the riders know that they're there. You'll see as they come out of sections that there will be people. Now Hincapie's got riders with him now, trying to pull him back along the way. Boassenhagen is just ahead of him, and just ahead of that is Bernard Eisel. These are two right-hand men, especially Eisel, Sean. He's very experienced in this race. He's very experienced in these sort of races. Big, strong man. And it's, as we've said, it's all for George Hincapie at Columbia High Road.
Yes, well, certainly, in the situation that Hincapie's in at the moment, he's certainly going to be looked after by the teammates, and we can see there, the cars behind this group of trombone, and they're in just up in the distance. So I think we would see Hincapie getting back quite quickly, and certainly it's not really going that fast up front. So that is, a big advantage for George, because if there was a lot of attacks up front and was really giving it at 100%, he would have a bit more of a difficult chase here. But I think we should see him coming back in the next kilometre or two into this group of Tom Boonen and all the big favourites.
Well, I'll be interested to hear on cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com. What your predictions are for a 1, 2, 3. We've already had a number of people, including Michael Lysett again, saying, well, is it possible to get a quick step 1, 2, 3? You know, Boonen, De Volder and Chavanel. It's perfectly possible. We haven't had a we haven't had a 1, 2, 3 since Mapai days, I don't think. Mapai and also Domo Farm Frites. Did they do a 1, 2, 3 as well, the Domos? I think they did. But, oops, just trying to get around that. I noticed one of the B-Box Bouygues Telecom boys is riding, I think it's this one at the back here, riding a cyclocross bike. But the only other man I think, we certainly didn't see that Bouygues Telecom rider this morning sorting that out. But Service Carnarvon was absolutely mobbed by people this morning for interviews. Carnarvon riding a Focus cross bike today. 71 kilometers to go. They're in section 15. After this, they move on to just 4 kilometers later. Tilloy, a 3-star difficulty one. The next 3 are all 3 stars. Tilloy, Bouville-la-Farette, and Aurich. And then the Pervel is the big one at 211 kilometers coming up. That's section 10, 3 kilometers, a 5-star difficulty rating. Our breakaway men are down to 10, or were down to 10. They're pushing on now, definitely beginning to push on at the front. This is Service Carnarvon. Something, well, we've got something, I think Bradley Wiggins, I think, is involved in this crash. I hear on the race radio, one of the somebody's come down on this crash. And we also heard the name of Brad Wiggins. This is Emanuel Eviti, who managed to get a win in the Vuelta a España a number of years ago. He's hit the island in the middle, and he's brought Wiggins down with him, I think. I think that's what it is. I think Wiggins has catapulted himself into it. Let's just see. That's terribly bad luck for the Briton. Emanuel Eviti missed the traffic island completely and collided with it. And then I think it's Wiggins. The Wiggins we heard the name mentioned. It's certainly a white jersey. Looks like it could have been a Slipstream, Garmin Slipstream jersey. And that's terribly bad luck if that's Wiggins. 70 kilometers to go. Rough as old boots, this. Kurt-Asle Arvidsson from Saxo Bank on the front, the Norwegian road champion, now pushing along. Spare a thought if you're just joining us, for the man holding the camera right down next to the ground here. Not only does he have to hang over the side of the bike all day, but he has the possibility of smashing the bottom of the camera to bits. There he is. 1, 2, 3, 4 Saxo Bank riders on the front. Johan von Summeren is the rider from Silence-Lotto up towards the front. Michael Shah from Astana is up here as well. Now we've got an Agritubel rider in there. Now I would not be surprised if that is not Kevin Ista. He's a rider I would suggest keep an eye open for. Number 141, Kevin Ista, in the all royal blue, almost dark blue, of Agritubel this year, because he's in very, very good form and he can ride these sort of cobbles. Still working to get back on is George Hincapie. That's Edvald Boisenhagen almost colliding with the Cervelo car. And Boisenhagen just ploughing his own furrow on the left-hand side of the road. In front of him is George Hincapie with Bernard Eisel. This is a dangerous time, isn't it, Sean? Because not only are the cars trying to find their way across, the motorcycles will try and find a better way across as well. Just getting through cars on these cobbled sections, very difficult.
Yes, it certainly is, and we can see there Boisenhagen, you know, having problems just staying up in the centre, and as we can see, the riders are trying to ride in the centre, and that is, you know, where the best conditions are, and of course with the cars, you know, taking up a bit of that on the centre of the road, it's always a bit dangerous. But yeah, certainly George, he's got back in here, and you know, I think he's done quite well, because it hasn't been a long chase. 2 teammates with him who've done all the work really. So it's important that you do not have to ride if you're going to, you know, going for this one in the final. If you have to ride for a number of kilometers, you can pay the price, and you know, every little bit of energy spared here, it means a lot in the end.
Now, who's this? Is this the front of the break? Is this Carnarvon having a go here, looking over his shoulder? There's 68 to go. I think it is, because I think that's the coming out of the section of cobbles. It is Carnarvon definitely pushing on a little bit, testing a few legs here as they come into section 14. 68.9 kilometers still to go. Lots of questions coming in. Thank you. Keep them coming. Right at the back of this group here, the big Italian Matteo Pozzato. Pozzato, winner of a stage in the Tour de France about 3 years ago, now in the scorching heat. Outsprinted Christian Morini to take the win. But the Saxo Banks have got this between their teeth now. They are really pushing on here. 1, 2, 3, 4 riders at the front. And everybody's going to try and cover this move now. There's going to shed some bodies here, Sean. I think there's going to be people out the back door fairly shortly.
Yes, that certainly looks that way. That'll really, open the pace, and they have to start opening up this race. 68 kilometres to finish. The breakaway out front, of course, they're only just been hanging there, but still a lot of riders here in this group. And if you have got a team with 4 or 5 riders in this leading group, it's coming to the moment when you have got to try something now. And if you really push it going across the cobble sections, you can eliminate quite a lot of riders, because there is definitely riders in this group who are starting to feel the effects, starting to tire at the moment.
Yeah, they certainly are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the Saxo Bank riders, 6 up towards the front. It's getting a little bit interesting here. Question from David Madams in Wilbaston in Northamptonshire, saying back in 1949 there were 2 winners, André May and Sertse Coppi. That's the brother of Fausto Coppi. Why were there 2 winners? As far as I remember from reading the history books, they both entered the velodrome from different ways. One went one way, one went another way, where they were both given different directions on how to get there. And although they and then originally the victory was given, I think, to the Belgian. I think it was that way around. But they realized that there was going to be a real problem there, so they gave it as a joint victory. And it's the only time in its history that it has been done. It was a miscommunication of directions coming into the Roubaix velodrome at the end. Look at this, all completely strung out now. Saxo really beginning to do some damage here. They've had recent success here in Paris Roubaix. Remember Stuart O'Grady winning in 2007, Fabian Cancellara in 2006. And they had O'Grady and Cancellara up towards the front last year as well, but it was too difficult for Cancellara and in fact Alessandro Ballan at the time to outsprint Tom Boonen, who's got a hell of a kick on him when he wants to go. No Alessandro Ballan this year for Lampre. He's had a blood virus which has kept him off the bike. He is here though. He's commentating for Rai Sports, the Italian channel, and he is looking relaxed and healthy. Well, some damage coming on here, Sean. There's little groups happening all over the road, and if you get caught out in the middle of nowhere here, there's going to be such a dreadful fight back. Yes,
well, certainly the Saxo Banks have really upped the pace here, and we just see the shot earlier. They really turned it on. A little bit of side wind here, as we can see. The leading. This is a group which has lost contact here. There's some of the riders from Garmin, and a lot of riders losing contact here. It's certainly the time to do it, because you can cause a lot of damage, and they certainly have done that. As we can see, there's 4 or 5 groups here, which was the group of Boonen, and it's really split apart here at the moment.
This is Pedro Aurelio trying to get back on one of the Spaniards who is capable of riding in crosswinds and so on. He's a big strong lad, is Pedro Aurelio. Notable from the front certainly by a tiny little goatee beard, which he usually has is below the lower lip. That's one way of spotting him. Pete Marlowe asking, do they always use the same parcours? That's always the same route? No, they don't actually, no, because they try and include new sections of cobbles now and again, and that's what they often do. They go through the feed station as we speak, trying to get some more nutrition on board. They do put new sections of cobbles in, so they do vary the route. I don't think they've got any brand new ones this year. There is a society, the Friends of Roubaix, that maintain a lot of these cobbled sections and find new ones and actually rebuild them, and some of them have been rebuilt in times gone past. Just have a look once again at these great big massive balloon tires. Now they said they're 27s, these on the front of the on the front and back of these Saxo Bank. They look bigger than that to me. They look almost like 28. But people asking, are there Is it better to run slightly lower pressures in these tyres? I think they do run so well. They would do run slightly lower pressures, not too low though, because you run the risk of a pinch puncture if you're not very careful. But slightly lower on a bigger tyre will make a difference. But it's a hell of a lot of pushing to be done if you've got that. Fabian Cancellara pushing it along at the front at the moment. Now Boonen just 2 back on this. I think the rider from Rabobank is Tom Lisa, still up the front, is it not?
Heyman. I think it's Heyman, actually.
Is it Matt Heyman
yes.
who's got himself towards the front?
Yes. It looks like his big...
his big frame.
Yes, big style. Yes, big. And certainly, it's proving difficult here for the Saxo banks. They've caused a little bit of damage, but not a lot of riders prepared to take up the pulling on the front with them. And we can see again it's slowed down here. Of course, you look at the Rabobank rider Heyman. He's got a man up front in Postuma, so he's not going to ride. He's going to use that and say, well, I've got a man out front. I cannot, I'm not going to ride here. And that is the case with a lot of riders and a lot of teams here. We see the Cervelos as well. They have, just disappeared a bit off the front, and it's coming to the moment now where you're going to see the race. I think as we talked about here, the attacks, I think it's going the tactic and the team tactics, because there is quite a few teams here with a number of riders still in this leading group.
Damien Goudin on the back is the man with the cyclocross bike for Bouygues Telecom. Whoop. Camera giving us a shot of the green and pleasant side of the road here as they run up this flat landscape towards Roubaix. 259 kilometers. It jiggles about all over the place going north. 1 minute from the breakaway back to the peloton. You'll see riders from the front of the breakaway again, Sean, who think they've got a little bit more in the legs, still giving it a go, because there's 64 kilometers to go. If Carnarvon or other people think they've still got something there, they're going to go as well.
Well, I think there is certainly riders up front who want to continue on, pushing it on here, because the situation, stay as long out in front as possible. But there's other riders who will, certainly try and, get carried along in this leading breakaway and just wait and play the game until the big guys come up. As we can see here now, it's the Quick Steps who are starting to push it on this section.
All strung out on the left-hand side of this bit of pave here, trying to keep off it. There's Kevin Ista at the back there, 141. Keep an eye on him. I think he possibly has something in the legs. Now on the right-hand side of the road, Quick Step really putting the hammer down. A bit of dust being kicked up now as it dries out. By and large, it's fairly nice out here as Tom Boonen puts the hammer down on this section. Number 13 and 1.4 kilometers, and now he's really stringing people out here. This is a big move, I think. He's testing a few legs behind him. This is the first time we've really seen him go. Incidentally, a lot of people suggesting, and I think you're probably right, we did discuss this yesterday when we were looking at the tyres being run by Saxo, very possibly Dugasts, made by Dugas, the people who make the cyclocross tyres, by the way. They used to make great silks as well for track racing, but yeah, perhaps they are Dugas. They've got that very, very Dugas type sidewall on them, I think, or casing, should we say. They're very sort of cream-coloured casing, and may well be, but they are unbranded. This is our lead group. They've got about, they had a minute last time we saw it, but that's going to be coming down pretty quickly, because now Tom Boonen has put a real fire into the chasing behind. There he is, look. Oh no! There's some spectators there on the side of the road, and that wasn't a cyclist. There was a motorcyclist. Oh my word! Oh, that's awful! Oh, somebody's been hit by one of the motorcycles going along the side of the road. Oh, I do hope they're all right, but there's no movement there at all. That was awful. Looking over his shoulder is Tom Boonen to see what is going on, but that is a dreadful, dreadful thing to have to see live on television. Oh. Oh, and I think a lot of the riders have seen that as well, and especially these riders at the front. That's just shaking them a little bit. I mean, they've got to keep their mind on the job they're doing, but even so, that can't be nice to see, Sean. That'd be an awful thing to see on live television.
Yes, it looked a serious one there. The spectator got he just got touched, got clipped by the motorbike, and yes, certainly the driver of that motorbike maybe looked around for a moment to see where the riders were, and if the spectator just a little bit out on the road, maybe stood out a little bit, but it certainly looked like a pretty serious one there.
Oh, it's dreadful. Well, pace just easing up a little bit at the front here. It's Tom Boonen. We'll try and just get back to the racing. That's made my stomach absolutely turn over. Being a motorcyclist and a cyclist and a fan, of course, is awful. Tom Boonen was the man who put the hammer down on the front, and he split this group apart now. He's got a group trying to chase back on. I know I saw Fabian Cancellara in this group. Juan Antonio Flecha is here. Johan von Summeren is here. Martin Mascant, I think, is the rider from Garmin. I don't know who the rider from Liquigas is, but just to let you know, there is a sweepstake amongst all the commentators here. And we put Enrico Franzoi in here as a man who might do something just out of the ordinary. Well, I don't think Francois made the group so far, which is unfortunate. Haussler is the man at the front. No Lampreys in here that I can see. 62 kilometers to go, and they're all just looking around. I think they're all just trying to find out who's in the group now, Sean. Who's managed to get there? Waiting for the next group to come across, maybe? I don't know. There's a lot of looking going on here. Who's going to take up the charge? Is it a case that they're all waiting to see, are there other men coming across, or are they trying to force the quick steps to actually do the pacemaking here?
Yes, well, it looks the situation, you know, they're looking at the quick steps. We see the Liquigas, it looks very much like Quinziato is there. We see Van Summeren from Silence-Lotto also, but you know, they seem to be just waiting for the quick steps to do the pulling along here, and that's certainly the case. We talked about that so much. We see De Volder up there with Boonen, of course, and they're going to leave it to them because they are the big favourites as a team, as a block. They are the ones today, and we've mentioned that many times, and that has been the talk over the past 2 days. Who can beat the quick steps? And it's certainly looking that way. A lot of riders allowing them and waiting for them to do the majority of the work.
Well, Boonen and company really upping the pressure on the front. One Liquigas rider, we don't know whether it's our outside Chance Franzoi or not, who's got to this front group. You just have to look. Boonen on the left-hand side of your screen, looking over his shoulder. Juan Antonio Flecha, is that going with him? It looks like his style, hunched over the bars there, now gets his hands in the middle. Actually, Flecha is much bigger when you meet him than he looks on the bike. He managed to get himself really low on the bike, Juan Antonio Flecha. But when you see him, he looks like quite a small guy on the bike. When you see him, he's quite tall. He's quite big. Well, we do hope the spectator is okay. If we get any news from Race Radio, we'll let you know exactly what's going on there. Matti Breschel for Saxo Bank is on the front right of your shot. Cancellara is the Saxo Bank rider in those luminous orange shades. Jeremy Hunt on the front now for Cervelo. Also, Thor Hushovd is in this group as well. Hoste seems to have been dropped by this group. Frederic Guesdon, also, who was trying to get across, seems to have been dropped by this group as well. So Guesdon, the winner in 1997, sort of fairy tale it would be for him if he could get another win 12 years after that. In section 12 of the Pavé now. This is the section at Arish, 1.7 kilometers in length, a 3-star rating. Just a few kilometers to go, 10 or so to go. 12 in fact to Cervelo, which is a 5-star rating, and 3 kilometers of really hard stuff. Maybe they'll try and get in there a bit early. Now Cervelo trying to turn up the wick once again. This is extremely tactical. There's a lot of team men still together, Sean. There's 4 or 5 from each of the major players still knocking about. Quickstep, Saxo Bank and Cervelo all willing to have men in numbers up the front here and really push on hard to break anybody else going on.
Yes, well, certainly it's the moment to break up here, and you know, we're in the section Hushovd, also quite a difficult one, and you know, 1.7 kilometers of distance. Riders, you know, are going to be, you know, starting to feel the effects now, and if you've got a team, you've got a number of riders, now is the moment to start turning it up, and we can see the Cervelos once again upping the pace in the front and creating a lot of damage back further in this group.
Yeah, Steve Kozza was suffering ahead of that. This is quite a good little group now. Pozzato had got across to this group. Absent from this group, as you would expect, I should imagine, Euskaltel. We saw the bus coming today saying, and you know what, it's a long way to come for not very much. They started with 6, I think, this morning. Service Carnarvon trying to fight to hang on here. So the end of the group, it's all been caught. Kozza was going backwards, but Carnarvon just hanging in here. The winner back in 2001. It looks to me as though Guesdon has managed to get back on here. He's at the back with Service Carnarvon here. Go on, son. I'm holding a candle up for him today, because it would be brilliant if he could do something 12 years after he won. And look at this as they enter the Hushovd section. Cervelo really pushing hard once again. Now Thor Hushovd lying second in line. Is it Hunt doing the work on the front here? He's bouncing around like crazy, but it looks like his style is a real hard, chunky rider. He knows all this sort of stuff. Always in great shape. He's had a great season so far. Really inspired, like so many other riders who've gone to Cervelo to start again, to do something new. And a great move for Thor Hushovd, because he spent such a long time, such a great career with Crédit Agricole. Carnarvon, who won with Dermo Farm Frites. Well, that's bye-bye Carnarvon. Straight out the back. They spent a long time up ahead, and they've got through that, just testing a few legs. Who's taking it up at the front again? It's Quickstep pushing on, and immediately shadowed by Cervelo. How do you see it unfolding from here, Sean?
Well, it's certainly starting to live up here, and a lot of attacks. You know, we see there the Cervelos really pushing it on. It looked like Jeremy Hunter. It could have been the Rash, who was also...
No, it wasn't right. Rash is a lot taller and thinner, I think.
Yes, so it's but it's certainly, you know, they have the advantage here. Hushovd seems to be, you know, very much to the fore, and it is coming into the stage where they have to start trying, you know, up the pace here. And I think certainly, you know, the problem is with Boonen here. He's going to, you know, just follow these groups and try and get as far as possible. And as I said, if he can get to the finish here with a number of riders, it's, you know, the position he would love to be in a sprint. But I think a lot of teams have different tactics in mind.
Look at this, Haussler. Boonen looking over his shoulder to see where people are, having a word with the team car on the radio. He's got Flecha in his wheel. Haussler is too much of a threat to let go away. This is interesting now. Heinrich Haussler with Tom Boonen, Tom Flecha. That's Tom Flecha, did I say? Juan Antonio Flecha is what I meant to say, clearly. Oh, it's not Boonen up ahead. There's Boonen. It must have been De Volder then, sorry, because there was some roundels on the end of those that jersey. Well, apologies for that. Let's have a look. There is Flecha. Haussler. It looks like... is that Klostergaard? Yeah, Klostergaard, who's still in there. And who is the rider from Quickstep? Weylandt?
Yes, Wouter Weylandt.
These are 5 riders away at the moment. Big favourites looking at each other. Not wanting to commit yet to anything. Just trying to keep things under control. It's Quinziato. He's the rider from Liquigas. Didn't look like Quinziato, actually, at first. Saw Manuel Quinziato this morning, and he was looking a little bit nervous, I have to say. A couple of spectators just walking out without looking as they were going up and down to the signing on rostrum, where, you know, the stage where they waved to the crowd, and he was a little bit short with them at times. I understand because he didn't want to get knocked off the bike from people not looking, but just a little bit nervous. I think he knows he could do something today. Quinziato in very good form, and he's a good rouleur as well. There's Pozzato. Look, he's shadowing once again Tom Boonen, and just behind him is Thor Hushovd. Again, was quite quiet yesterday. His hand doesn't seem too bad. There's quite a few knuckle scrapes, I've got to say, from Thor Hushovd on that left hand, but he seems to be okay. This is the break just up the road. Klostergaard was in the original break. Wouter Weylandt was also in the original break. They've got Manuel, Quinziato, Juan Antonio Flecha, and Heinrich Haussler in this group. But there's at least 2 or 3 men who are a little bit too dangerous to a Tom Boonen here. 12 seconds only. Haussler, Quinziato and Flecha, too dangerous to let get away, Sean, surely.
Well, certainly it is a danger one for the quick steps. I don't think they're going to be happy with this, with Wouter Weylandt's up there, because he's been out there, you know, right from the beginning, and he's, you know, going to, sorry, no, it was Martin Weylandt's getting them 2 riders mixed up, but certainly I don't think you know, they're happy with this one. And when you look at the riders that are up there, Hushovd, of course, you know, he's a dangerous rider. Quinziato also, I don't think they will be happy with that one, and we, you know, should see them taking up the pace here and trying to close this one down. Some very, very good riders here, and I don't think it's the best situation for the quick step, so I think you know, we should see them trying to do something to rectify this situation.
Yeah, I think so. There is Wouter Weylandt. Kasper Klostergaard is the rider right at the back for Saxo. Heinrich Haussler, once again active. He's been so active all year. I mean, it was such an impressive start to the season, Sean, early season classics, because he seems to have just blossomed, having gone to Cervelo, away from the Gerolsteiner squad. I mean, what is it that makes a rider blossom in a different environment?
Well, it's amazing the way he's riding this year, and he's been, you know, going for a number of weeks now and has, you know, had some great results, and really, you know, upped his game big time from last year. You know, maybe in the team he was got a bit too settled in it, and you know, that is a situation which you have seen before with a lot of riders when they make a move to a new team. You know, the change of colour, change of jersey, they can, you know, ride that much better, and certainly Hushovd is doing that this year. Maybe the training as well, possibly, you know, with the new team, the training at the beginning of the year, pre-season training was totally different, and that could be also part of his, you know, much better performances this year.
Manuel Quinziato. Oh! Sorry, mate, he says. I just thought they're one looking one way, one looking the other as they come into this section. I just thought for a minute we were going to see something nasty there, but just tapping shoulders, saying, oh, that's okay, sorry about that. Both looking around over each other's over their right and left shoulders, so not quite looking at each other. There's another group just trying to get up to them, of about 10 riders at the moment, and they are going to make it, I think. This is sector 11, 2.6 kilometers, as you can see at Orchy. This is the chasing group, and it will be very, very soon come into the 5-star section of Orchy proper, which is going to, as Lionel Burney was pointing out, this is where my legs went. There'll be a few guys who were wishing their legs would just come back at this point. There is Tom Boonen with the #1 on his back. Right next to him, Thor Hushovd, who's doing well here. Very well. And Filippo Pozzato in the wheel of Boonen. Once again, there's Leif Hoste. Turns a little bit bigger gear than some of the others. Sylvain Chavanel still in this group. There is Matti Breschel of Saxo Bank. Johan von Summeren, who had to do a lot of work, I think it was last year, was it? Number 56 there is Greg Henderson from the original breakaway, and Frederic Guesdon from Francis de Jure in this group as well. Good on him. The quick steps having to do some work although we've got Weylandt up ahead, there are 2 or 3 very dangerous riders up there. Juan, Antonio, Flecha, they don't want to get away. Could it be Flecha's year, Sean? I mean, I know in the commentators' sweepstakes you put down Flecha as being a possible top 3 man.
Yes, well, certainly, you know, he's been there and, you know, always knocking on the door as such. And the group he's in now at the moment, if he's got it in the end, I think, you know, we could see Flecha. He's a very aggressive rider, and he, you know, capable of going in the attack, you know, quite early, 20-25 kilometres to go. As we see Boonen here, certainly up in the pace a lot, and a puncture for Martin Weylandt here. He was doing the chasing, but Boonen now goes in the attack. And again, you know, it just it proves that they're not happy with the situation up front. They're trying to, you know, trying to break up this one and trying to pull back this leading group. So certainly the quick steps, you know, not happy with the situation out front.
Well, once again, he's got his shadow behind him. Pozzato. Well, he's doing exactly the right thing, Pozzato. He doesn't have to show himself. If Boonen is going to do the work, he just sits there. He won't be very well liked for doing it, but certainly not by Quick-Step and Tom Boonen. But Boonen really has to pull it out of the bag on this one. It has to make his season. This is the real big one for him. Already a winner here, Boonen, of course, a multiple winner here back 2005 and 2008. He could join the illustrious triple club if he wins again today, and that is his sole aim for today as they get off the cobblestones onto the gravel and back onto cobblestones again. This is the front group. Haussler, Flecha, Quinziato is in here, Weylandt, and a little bit too difficult to let get away. Klostergaard was also in the group. They're getting a bit strung out by the pressure being put on by Tom Boonen. They're all getting together now. Round in the corner then is Tom Boonen and co to link up. So we now have a group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 15, but they're not happy here. It's Heinrich Haussler still pushing on. Wants to keep the pressure on, Sean, and try and break down that machine that they've got, Quick-Step. In the French paper, they were being called the war machine, Quick-Step, and they just want to take it apart if they possibly can by constant pressure and constant attacking.
Yes, well, I think it's a good situation for Hushovd to get out of this group, and if you look at the riders he's with, he certainly has a chance here, Hushovd, and they know that, and they have, you know, they have worked for that in the Cervelo team. They have upped the pace quite a lot. They've been doing a lot of the work since we've come through the Rabobank sector. So it's in certainly Hustler's interest and in Cervelo's interest that he keep on riding up front, and you know the riders he've got with him, Flecha, I think, not afraid to, you know, pushes along here. Quinziato also interested, so it's a good mix of riders. And
look at this, Chavanel going. Sorry to interrupt you. Chavanel going on the attack. Are we going to see the old 1-2 being played here then?
Well, certainly the quick steps, they are, you know, getting concerned with the situation at the moment, and you know, continuously upping the pace. We've seen that, you know, on the section of cobbles immediately they're, you know, keeping it pushed along, and you know, do not want this group out front to get any major advantage. Now
Boonen gets to the front. Are they going to shed the numbers here? Well, they've Cervelo really have 2 men in here rather than 3. I think Andreas Klier is hanging on by grim death. They're like grim death at the back. There he is, 155. You can see the shoulders are a little bit hunched. The head is going down a little bit. And when the pace ups, he's finding trouble getting onto it. Johan von Summeren is in here for Leif Hoste, who's just lurking in the back at the moment. But Hoste's had a difficulty getting back on a couple of times, Sean. Is that just playing it cool, or he's literally having difficulty?
Well, I think he's starting to suffer, losing contact when they really turn up the pace on the section of cobbles. When we see, you know, the teams, you know, attacking across the sections, losing contact and just clawing his way back in again. And when you get in a situation like that, when a rider's in that situation, you get back 2-3 times, but you cannot normally you cannot continue on doing that. You're going to pay the price as you go further towards the end of this one.
Oh, this is turning into a real good race, isn't it, Sean? What 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 men in here who could contest the finish?
Certainly, at the moment, it's looking good up front, because who's going to close this one down unless they can really break it up on the following section of cobbles to come. They're going to pull out the advantage out in front, and it looks like that they're pretty well organised up front. Most of the riders wanting to ride. Of course, Wouter Weylandt from Quickstep, he's going to try and tag along on this one. He's going to use the tactic that Boonen is coming up from front with some other teammates, Chavanel, and he's just going to get carried along here and not contribute at all up front.
This is interesting. On the far left-hand side, it's Sylvain Chavanel pushing on once again. Now, who's going with him this time? Is it Andreas Klier, who looked like he was having a little bit of trouble at the back, but maybe just taking a breather? Chavanel with Klier. Klier goes from the back. You can see Chavanel going around the outside. He goes around the outside of Guesdon, and Klier is onto his wheel straight away. So this is the battle. No, I'm not coming through. He says, I haven't the energy. I'm just here to mark you. Hushovd wearing 151, just lurking in the middle here. At the back is Heinrich Haussler there, 152. 16 is Kasper Klostergaard there, looking over his shoulder, waiting for the car to come up. Guesdon, 61 from Francis de Gea, almost colliding and keep it under control. Andreas Klier, I think he really is suffering, but he's got such experience, Klier, in these classic races. Leif Hoste still in there. He's got Johan von Summeren with him. Quinziato is the only representative from Liquigas in here. Cancellara in this group as well, up towards the front. Just looking under his shoulder now is Wouter Weylandt. Can see the former double world time trial champion sitting behind him. Winner of Milan San Remo from a kilometre out. Wearer of the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. Winner actually into Compiègne a couple of years ago was Fabian Cancellara. Now on to section 10. This is an absolute killer. This is Pével, Monza Pével, 5-star rating, 3 kilometers of brutal cobbles, and this little select group will be being chased hard by a whole bunch of people who've missed out. Now George Hincapie of the Columbia High Road Squad has suddenly disappeared from the front group. He's nowhere to be seen. So Columbia High Road have got nobody up here. Garmin Slipstream's Martin Mascand has missed this group as well. And they will be fighting to try and get back on. They have nobody up at the front here. But of the main favourites, they are the ones who are missing at the moment. And that's not good news for either of those two. This is absolutely brutal, this one, Sean, isn't it? Horrible.
Yes, it certainly is, and it's into the moment of the race where it's really going to hurt, and if you're starting to tire, it's certainly going to get really difficult, and the pace is still being kept quite high by the Cervelo team here, and it's we can hear riders losing contact. We can Hammond coming over race radio starting to lose contact from the group here, so certainly a lot of very good riders, a lot of specialists just getting into difficulty at this moment.
Hammond at 151 having problems. It looks like he's there on the far right hand side of the shot now. This is Hincapie having to do his own chasing here. He's missed out. Maybe he's working for somebody else, but certainly he's got other riders with him. Maybe Boysenhagen, 153 is in there somewhere. I don't see where he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back in this group here, with Hammond is now 4th in this group. Well, good for Roger. He's picked up the riders who really need to get across to this group. So if you can hang in there, that's good going. There he is on the right-hand side of the shot. Third in the year when Magnus Backstedt won, 2004. Riding for Mr. Bookmaker. I think he was British champion at the time. He was riding the British champion's jersey as well. And I think everybody at Eurosport thought I was completely bonkers because we were that year, although I wasn't covering it. I think it was David Duffield covering it. I did get up on the desk and yell at the television, which is something you don't see very often in the Eurosport office. 46 kilometers to go then. Well, Sean, can Hincapie and the boys get back onto this? They've got a minute to make up.
Well, I think it's going to be majorly difficult for them to get back, and a lot of the riders that are with Hincapie, are really just hanging there, and the ones maybe, who could do a little bit up front with Hincapie have riders up in the front group, and you're into a situation where the tactic come into it. So I cannot see George getting back into this group, as we can see Boonen up front, and that's going to be the situation. Riders and teams pushing it along, and then riders going in the attack, as we see Boonen here. So it's going to be major difficult for Hincapie to get back up.
And Filippo Pozzato once again right on his rear wheel. They're almost conjoined twins, aren't they, in racing in the last week or so. Juan Antonio Flecha trying to latch onto the wheel of Pozzato again, and Hushovd up here as well for Cervelo. And it's Boonen doing the driving at the moment on the front. It's Boonen, Pozzato, Flecha, Hushovd, and who is coming up behind them? Hoste, with von Summeren behind him. I think this was the section a number of years ago when Leif Hoste got a Flandrian flag wrapped around his rear wheel. Is that right? And he locked it up completely, and he managed to hold the bike upright. And beginning to suffer a little bit at the back is Manuel Quinziato. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 riders chasing the extra pressure being put on by Tom Boonen. And now Pozzato, Filippo Pozzato, deciding to come to the front and actually do some work. And they'll be pleased about that. Quinziato being distanced now. He's just gamely hanging in there. If he can get through this section, maybe on the tarmac, he can time trial his way back up to this rear wheel. But it's only a matter of time. It's going to happen once again. This is the group chasing down with, it looks like, Hammond on the front with, I think, Hincapie just behind him. Wow, this intense pressure, just ratcheting it, the pace up little by little by little. Boonen doing a tremendous amount of work. It looks like he wants to win this one by himself, Sean.
Well, it's certainly, it's the moment to start, creating damage, and he's certainly doing that. With the number of riders in that group, he has to, really turn up the pace here and try and split it and get into a smaller group out front. And of course, if Boonen can get a group of 5 or 6 out front, it's a manageable situation. Then, if you're feeling good in the end, you have a number of riders just to control. Where if you're in a group of 15, 20 riders, well, then there's going to be attacks all the time and much more difficult situation to control.
Van Summeren gets to the front with Boonen behind. There is a Hushovd, there's Flecha, there's Hoste. He's still hanging in there. Could it be his year? 3 times a second place man in the Tour of Flanders. Got shelled out at about this distance, I think, last year in Paris Roubaix. This is a pretty select group. They're going to have to fight to get back on here. There's still time to get back. They're going to have to work together now to get there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 riders behind. The gap not too big, but how long before somebody else goes off the front and starts to make life very, very difficult again? The wind is getting up here at the Velodrome in Roubaix. It's changed from a headwind to a side wind now, but still the rain keeping off. 154 is Thor Hushovd. There's the confirmation of this front group then. Boonen, Hoste, Van Summeren, Flecha, Pozzato. Well, there were a lot of people writing Pozzato off, actually. as not being able to do this one. It's looking good for him at the moment.
Yes, he certainly is looking good and looking very comfortable there, and certainly, you know, has really ridden his race tactically very well. You know, never seen him at the front, never making any effort, and he's, you know, up here at the right moment. Of course, the situation is the Saxos and Cancellara, they have missed this one, so, you know, it'll be interesting to see what they have got, if they, you know, if they've got the manpower back in this this chasing group behind our 6 leaders.
A terrific riding by Van Summeren and Leif Hoste, because in the earlier attacks, when Quickstep and Cervelo were making it really difficult, they almost missed out completely. 20 seconds then is this group here, with Cancellara doing the pushing on the front, trying to get back to that group. Cancellara a winner here.
And there was a moment for Cancellara and the teammates from Saxo, because you know, if they allow this group to grow out to, you know, 20-30 seconds, then it's going to be game over. They have to try and close it down very quickly, otherwise, you know, the victory in this race is certainly going to, you know, slip from between their fingers.
There's 3 guys on 51. Is that Hammond coming back on? It is. Is that one? That's 54. Sorry, it's Hushovd. Yeah. I thought that was a shot of Hammond from it. We've got a slightly odd-sized screen here that squashes everybody up, so everybody looks slightly chunkier than they are in reality. It's a wide screen, 16 by 9, and they've, when you put it that way, makes everybody look slightly wider than they are. But Thor Hushovd is on the back here. I tell you what, Frederic Guesdon, you know, is still hanging in there, you know, with Cancellara's group. Getting a ride back if they can pull themselves back. This is section 9. It's only a short section, this. 0.7 of a kilometre. There we are. Just a 2-star rating. And just float over the top of this one if they can, if that's the word you could possibly use for it. Floating over the top. George Hincapie's group still chasing from behind, trying to get back on. The last time we saw that, there was about a minute's gap. It's not good for Hincapie. Again, not going to be his year. And Cancellara's group just entering section 9, pushing on as much as possible. Matti Breschel at the front, driving along. Breschel was looking very, very good. Now, what are the tactics here? Who are they riding for, Sean? Because they've got 2 riders capable of something. Breschel's got a good, decent sprint on him, and Cancellara is a former winner here back in 2006. They've both got to try and get on. Will they work for each other?
Well, I think it's a situation you have to just, you know, give it the effort here, try and close this one down, because the gap we see 24 seconds. So it is, you know, a really difficult time, a dangerous time for the Saxo Bank team here, and you know, they need to ride with everybody. Breschel, Cancellara, and anybody they have got in this chasing group, they have to really, you know, get together here and start working, because if this gap grows, as I said, to 30 seconds, it's going to be, you know, impossible for them to close it down.
It's interesting, it seems to have eased up a little bit at the front, just a bit. We saw Flecha sitting up just now, and Boonen sitting up, Pozzato sitting up. Boonen doesn't want that to happen. They're keeping it going. We're going to have to take a commercial break, unfortunately, but it's the chase on by Fabian Cancellara and boys trying to get back to this group here. Back live then. Front group, Boonen, Pozzato, Van Summeren, Hoste is lurking in the back. Flecha and Hushovd. Well, this is the man who has to make his entire season count, hanging on this race here. The Tour of Flanders, looks like he's been over at some point. The Tour of Flanders, a win going to his teammate Stein de Volder, who's now dropped off the front group here. And Hoste, the hopes of the entire Silence-Lotto fan club and the team itself, resting on Hoste. They've Heinrich Guesdon yesterday saying he's in really good shape, but it's just one of those things. They've lost the confidence. The team have lost the confidence. They've got 2 men up here. They've really got to do something.
Well, a great situation to be in for Silence-Lotto to have two men in the front, depending on how you're feeling as well. If you really start to tire in the end, and both are suffering big time, then it is difficult. But it's certainly for the morale when you have a teammate up there with you, when the attacks will start in the end. It's a great situation to be in, because you can just fire a man with each attack. So it's a big turnaround, because we talked about Silence-Lotto last week. They weren't as strong as we'd have expected to be, but they have certainly upped their game a bit today.
Pont-Thibault, section 8. This is just about a 1.5 kilometers long, a 3-star section, as you can see. Everything's flat here, but there are some pretty rough sections in the middle of this, and it drops away at the sides. There's some horrible areas at each side of this, away from the crown, and it's Hushovd who's riding in the rubbish bit. Get back in the middle. Boonen riding straight down the crown of the road, which is exactly what he needs to do, just powering away. 53 ring on the front, he's got 46 on the inside, but it's certainly on the big ring now. He's running 21 at the back, is the largest sprocket he's got there. Oh, some of those fans are going to have to be very careful. No news, unfortunately. The race radio has just come across to say there is no news, unfortunately, about the spectator accident with the motorcycle at the moment. We do know it was an AG2R sponsored motorcycle, usually handing out drinks. We just have to see. I'm afraid I wish we could bring you further news, but we can't. This is back on the front of the chasing group with Klostergaard. There is Cancellara, Haussler. Great position for Haussler to be in, just sitting there, waiting. There's Frederic Guesdon, 38 years of age now, and a winner of this event 12 years ago. 25 seconds. He's getting to the danger point, though. I don't know. Would Haussler consider try to get across the gap now, Sean? I mean, maybe Hushovd could do with somebody else up there.
I don't
see it happening.
I can't see it happening, and for one rider to go across the gap here would be majorly difficult. Certainly, for Haussler with Hushovd up there, I think he's in a good situation, and he's just going to allow the Saxo Bank team to just continue on riding here, and there's nobody else prepared to give a dig out with them. The gap, they're holding that gap at around the 25 seconds at the moment, but I can see it being difficult for them to close, really, to get back into the group of Boonen.
Yeah. Boonen trying to take a drink without dropping it. And the weather has been very, very favourable indeed for a cracking race that we've had here today. And Boonen has been, I've got to say, Bonen's been mighty, really. It's been largely him that's done this work, Sean.
Yes, it's certainly he's done the damage, and on the attack that he threw in there, he certainly split this group, and it's it's a situation, not the perfect situation for Boonen at the moment, because with two from Lotto up here, Flecha, for example, he's certainly he's going to go in the attack in the end. He's going to give it everything to try to pull off the big three here, because if it comes to a sprint, well then he has got no chance against the likes of Boonen, against the likes of the other better sprinters up there, of course. Hushovd, who's another very good sprinter. Yeah. So we certainly will see a lot of those riders who will want to go in the attack when we get into the last 15-20 kilometers.
Yep. So somebody actually writing in saying that there's a lot of pictures up on Cycling News, which is great, of all these bikes, and confirming what we were just speculating, actually, that those bikes, the Saxo bikes, have got 28 mil tires on rather than 27s. They look bigger than the others. They look really big. Especially made for Paris Roubaix. Dugasts, we guess. This is the lead group. It's 40 seconds gap now down to the chasing ride as well, unless something really spectacular happens, Sean, or they start fighting amongst themselves here at the front and not working. I'm finding it increasingly difficult to see any way back for the chasing riders.
No, it looks very doubtful at the moment, and they're going to continue riding in this leading group for quite a long time, because 36 kilometers to the finish, certainly. They're going to, go into the last 20 kilometers before they start, attacking each other, and by that time this gap is going to grow out, and I cannot see the group of Kintziato, coming back and to join up with this leading group.
Boonen on the front, Pozzato, Hoste, Van Summeren, Flecha just sitting at the back at the moment, doing very little on the front. This could indeed be his year. Boonen really wants this one. He needs it to justify his season, really. And he will enter the three-time winner club if he gets this. First won the race back in 2005. He was, I think it was the first time he entered, he was fourth. And talking of riders who were fourth, first time they entered, Martin Maskant, unfortunately, has missed this front group. That'll be a great disappointment to a lot of the Maskant fans around. And a great disappointment to himself as well. He was really hoping to do well. Had a great Tour of Flanders last weekend, but missed out this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the big men. The gap is still going out. It was 40 to 45 seconds, unless they can really put the hammer down. And once again, George Hincapie's missed out.
Yes, well, I think certainly he was caught out once again, and we see he had a mechanical problem at a time when it wasn't the real difficult moment to get back in there, but he certainly paid the price a little bit for that. But I think also his fitness and maybe not really as good as he was expecting to be, but if you find yourself in the wrong position, the wrong time, you can get caught out. If you go to a bit further back in the bunch and there's attack up front, it's always possible.
Manuel Quinziato, so good in the Tour of Flanders last week. In this chasing group now, sitting in the back, Frederic Guesdon just ahead of him. Then Andreas Klier, number 155. Heinrich Haussler also in that group, wearing on his back 152. Pozzato is doing the pace setting on the front here. They're going to have to chase really hard if they want to get back on. There is still the opportunity, but they've got to work a lot harder than they are at the moment. Boonen slips to the back behind Leif Hoste. Hoste, a big guy as well. Strange guy to look at when you sit next to him. He's got quite a small head, actually. Very big legs. I like him as a rider, actually. Hoste. It'd be great if he could pull this one off, because he's been trying so hard. He's there or thereabouts, but he's never quite pulled it off. As Quinziato takes an energy gel from the car. I think possibly getting to the end of his energy tether. Back then to the front group, that's Thor Hushovd pushing along. 200 meters only, this short section here. It's pretty rough though. The question is, how much has this man still got in the legs? He's done quite a lot of work, Sean, even either keeping up with the attacks of Boonen, or done his pull on the front as well, Thor Hushovd. And he's another rider who's really blossomed. He's got a new focus. A lot of people were saying, and we were saying last year, or discussing the fact that did he have the ability to win a major classic like Paris Roubaix? Never quite got that opportunity, or never felt that way at Crédit Agricole. Different man this year.
Yes, well, certainly he's been right from the beginning of the season. Seemed to have got that bit extra which he was missing in the last couple of years. And the situation he's in at the moment, he's in a magnificent situation. He's certainly going to play off a bone. He's going to keep bowling in his sights as much as possible. And if it comes down to a sprint, I think Hushovd certainly could give Boonen a great run for this victory here if they come onto the velodrome here in Roubaix for the sprint for the first place.
Hoste. Now pushing on a little bit. Flecha is the man who's doing very little work here. Sure, he's not been to the front one, maybe once in the last 5 minutes or so, or 10 minutes or so. And at what point is he going to launch an attack? Because he's got some very, very strong guys here with him, and he's going to have to go at some point. He usually goes with about 5 kilometers to go and gets caught in the last 500 meters. Is he going to play it tactically well enough, do you think? Is he smart enough tactically?
Well, we've talked about that before. Sometimes his tactics, are questionable, but it's an easier situation here, with 6 riders out in front. The tactics, they're not rocket science certainly in the end, but it depends. If he's got the energy in the end, if he's still very, very strong, well then he can do a lot of damage. And he's one of the ones who has to get away. If he have any chance of getting victory, he has to get away on his own, or get away with some of the non-better sprinters up in this group, because there is quite a few. If you look at Pozzato, Hushovd, Boonen, very, very good sprinters. So certainly his tactic is going to attack in the final. When that will be, it depends how far they keep on riding together. But I think Flecha could be the one who we would see going in the first one to go in the attack again.
Well, surely Flecha can ride the train of Silence-Lotto if they decide to do that, because Hoste is not going to be able to outsprint Boonen and Pozzato and Thor Hushovd. So they've got 2 men up there. They're going to have to do something if they possibly can, and Fletcher's going to be able to ride that train.
Yes, well, certainly that is going to be also the tactic of Silence-Lotto. They're in a good situation with 2 men up front, and not sprinters. They have gotten really any chance against the likes of Boonen and Hushovd when it comes down to a straight out sprint. So they're certainly going to go in the attack in the final also.
Just over 30 kilometers still to go. Filippo Pozzato, the coiffeur's friend, is at the head of this group, ahead of Thor Hushovd, still suffering a little bit on that left arm from the crash he sustained in the Tour of Flanders. He's got it well taped up, as you can see. Juan Antonio Flecha, again a man who's covered in patches. Tom Boonen, who's really did most of the damage to split the group up. He's done it 2 or 3 times, in fact. In the end, when Weylandt had a puncture, he went off by himself. There is Pozzato of Katusha. They really need to try and pull something out of the bag. Wilfried Peters, the director sportive of Quick Step, talking to Tom Boonen. Just is easing up a little bit at the moment as they get some stuff from the car. Maybe 1 minute and 5 seconds back. The others can still try and bridge the gap, but I doubt it very, very much indeed. Tom Boonen, this is while you're away, having to change a bike and get back on. That's not good for him. He had a rear puncture and having to get a new wheel, having to chase back on, and there's nobody there to help him now. And Tom Boonen's going to expend a fair amount of energy trying to get back. The #1 on his back, the former world champion, getting a new bike and having to come back. There he is at the back of this group. It's a good job it wasn't going absolutely flat out. Paul Addison writing in on cycling.eurosport@yahoo.com. Can we broadcast speeds, the drivers? I'm afraid we don't. We say this on most races. It's worth saying every time we're on air, though. We don't provide the pictures and the graphics for this. They are provided by the host broadcaster. In this case, it's French television. We go with what they've got. So if they were going to put the speeds on, that's great. Otherwise, it's incredibly expensive to do that sort of thing. The amount of telemetry you need, remember you need telemetry for every single rider to be fitted on. The logistics are very difficult. We take, I'm afraid, what the rest of Europe does as well, the rest of the world. Jan asking what's the just technically, very briefly, what was the difference between a cyclocross bike and a race bike? The angles are generally shallower. The fork angle's a bit, the rake on it's a bit shallower. Head angle's a bit different, longer chain stays, a bit beefier, and the biggest thing is they have cantilever brakes on them. They've got wider clearances, you can take bigger tires, you've got cantilever brakes on that are much, you've got not big progressive braking on that. Not that these caliper brakes aren't bad, they're extremely good. But that's the main difference very quickly. Tom Boonen having to work his way back to the group, having changed a bike. There he is. He's managed to get back on, and once again, almost right at the back, is Juan Antonio Flecha, just stretching a leg a little bit as Leif Hoste. Well, I'd like to see it, Hoste being able to do something today, and he's not particularly happy with the gear he's in at the moment. Tom Boonen, he's just probably not set up quite as well as it would do, but I mean, as a team leader, Sean, he will have a completely replicated bicycle on the roof of his team car. He is the man that they want to keep up there, and if there's any problems, he has got a spare bike set up exactly as he wants it.
Yes, well, certainly, you know, all the riders we have here in the front, except for Van Summeren, maybe the teams, they would certainly have at least one spare bike, and you know, the likes of Boonen, I think, you know, it's possible they would have extra ones. They would have bikes out on the road. We see many times where they are handing up fresh drinks on the cars that the masseurs would have out there. They would have extra bikes, and if there had been a crash earlier where Boonen had a broken bike, they would, you know, pick up that bike very, very quickly. So certainly, you know, for all the riders that are up here in front, Pozzato, same situation, definitely one bike at least, if not more, on the car following, and again, if there was a problem, they would be able to get a bike to the race, to the car which is following the race here, which is following this leading group.
Wayne riding in, Wayne Haussler from Wiltshire, saying we know about Boonen, Cancellara, Guesdon and Carnarvon. Are there any more former winners riding in the race? No is the answer to that. Boonen, Cancellara and Carnarvon and Guesdon are the only riders who've won before in this race who are racing today. Others who have won in recent years and aren't here. Stuart O'Grady is not riding. Backstead has retired from top-level racing, has his own team now, based in Sweden. Juan Antonio Flecha now starts to put his mark on this. Flecha going through this section here, sector 6, and beginning to try and shed some riders from the back. Van Summeren, I think, is the man just about hanging on here, with Leif Hoste right ahead of him. Pozzato for once, just sitting. Once again, he's shadowing Boonen again, though, Sean. He doesn't look like he's doing anything else other than sitting on Bonen's wheel once more.
Well, certainly it's a man to watch, because Boonen is, you know, going to really want to get this one, and if he can stay, you know, close with Boonen, keep in Bonen's wheel, it's a good situation. I think it's a good tactic to work, and we can see, you know, Flecha once again, you know, upping the pace here, accelerating, but off the front it's very difficult, you know, to get away in a situation like that. You have to attack from behind and take them by surprise as such, and you know, that is a little bit of again, you know, the tactic and experience, I suppose, on Fletcher's behalf, not the best way to try to get away on your own. You really have to attack them from behind, and you know, come with that extra speed, and that is, you know, the only chance maybe you have of getting away here. Certainly to ride off the front on the cobble sections, it's unless you're very, very strong and the others are starting to suffer majorly, it's a very difficult task.
Flecha now pushing hard on the front. I understand if you'd some of the entries on Twitter are saying that Mascant, hope Mascant doesn't need surgery from his crash. So that shows you what's happened with Mascant. He's crashed somewhere out on the course. That coming from Team Slipstream, so we know that's going to be absolutely accurate. He's had a crash. Matti Breschel looks like he's suffering, trying to to push on. 132 is the gap, and it's looking increasingly unlikely that these guys are ever going to make it back to the front group. Fabian Cancellara sitting in just behind him. 25 kilometers to go for our lead guys. Also on Twitter, Steep Hill TV saying Brian Smith, as to our colleagues sometimes, predicting Hushovd for a win. Well, I'm not surprised that Brian thinks that way. Hushovd, he's been very closely linked with the Cervelo team. Brian done a lot of work with him, knows the guys really well, a good friend of Hushovd, so he would like him to see him win. Out of these guys here, Sean, at the moment, who's looking the strongest for you?
I certainly think Pozzato is in good shape. Boonen also, you know, looks quite strong. Flecha, I think of those three, maybe. Hushovd, it's difficult to know. He's going to, you know, play the card here, just follow, and try and get into a sprint situation. I think he will be happy enough with that. But we can see the two Silence-Lotto riders. They seem to be the ones who are suffering that bit more at the moment. When Flecha really turned it on there, they seem to be having a little bit of problem just to stay in this group. But you know, it's certainly anybody up here in this group still have a great chance of winning, because we're going to see the tactics of the, you know, attacking each other, and sometimes it's not the strongest man, it's not the most powerful man the end who wins. You know, a weaker guy who is maybe struggling to stay in contact when the pace is really up can, you know, ride off the front and just go in the attack at a lucky moment, and nobody reacts for a while, and you get that 10-15 second advantage in the final 2 or 3 kilometers. And that could be the situation for some of the Silence-Lotto riders today.
It certainly could be. Here we are in this group. It's at the back here, Leif Hoste just behind Tom Boonen, who's now sitting on the wheel of Filippo Pozzato. And doing the driving on the front is Juan, or was Juan Antonio Flecha. Johan van Summeren has now gone to the front. 136 is the gap. Van Summeren, who was suffering under the pressure of Flecha, is now doing his work. Flecha getting a good ride. To me, he looks to be in the best position of all at the moment. Hoste pushing Boonen on. Get back in the line, matey. Yeah, Flecha looking in the best position of all at the moment for me. He's done great work over the last couple of years in this race, hasn't he, Sean, Van Summeren?
Yes, well, of course, Van Summeren, he's a domestique really in the Silence-Lotto team, but you know, had some great performances and won some, you know, quite good races, and you know, he's doing a magnificent job today. And you know, to be up here in the final, you must, you know, remember the riders he's up there with. You know, the big favourites, a lot of them, certainly, you know, from Van Summeren. He is probably the one who is, you know, the biggest surprise to find him up here, because he's really in top class company.
Yeah. In that big ring. Most of the riders riding 53 outside ring, inner ring about 46 for the big rouleurs, the big guys, and running through to a 21 sprocket at the back. Into section 6. This is hard as well. Bourgel. Well, they've just finished that section, but the rest of them will be coming into Bourgel fairly shortly. Hard section. 4-star rating. They've still got the crossroads at de l'Arbre, Carrefour de l'Arbre to go. 5-star rating, and 132 is the gap. Coming down a little bit, but not much. 22 kilometers still to run. They've been very lucky with the weather, Sean, and the wind hasn't been too bad either. Oh, Cancellara is gone from this group. Well, it's Guesdon who's at the front, the oldest winner here in the race. 1997. Manuel Quinziato now coming to the front to do some work, but Cancellara not had a great spring and not having a great Paris Roubaix now.
No, certainly not. And you know, that was the question over Cancellara. Has he got the condition? And you know, when you look at the last number of weeks, last week in the Tour of Flanders on the Koppenberg, he had a mechanical problem, and you know, did not continue in the race. And you need to ride a number of races. And certainly in Cancellara's position, you know, the earlier part, when you look back in March, not in the condition he was last year. So he certainly needed, like last Sunday, to ride the race and finish the race. And again today, he's paying the price. Just the distance he hasn't got. He hasn't ridden this distance in racing, and he's paying the price big time. We can see him there just really falling apart on that section of cobbles.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely falling apart. Decided that he just doesn't have the legs at all. And he's got... I don't know whether it was Klostergaard. I think it was Klostergaard still with him. I think Breschel is still a bit further ahead in the group with Guesdon. Although it looked as though he'd been suffering, so we'll just have to check. 1:15 is now the gap. Oh, well, they're trying hard to get back. It's Quinziato who was driving him along. We had 1:15 come through. Maybe I misheard. 1:45 then. My apologies for that. Well, that's the graphic we've got up. I would be very surprised if they'd taken 15 seconds out. They'd have to be absolutely flying. There we are. Juan Antonio Flecha looks confident though today. He's covered everything. He's not panicked. He's managed to stay with everybody. He's done a little dig on the last big section of cobbles to see just how strong everybody was. And looking very good. Pozzato suddenly going from looking absolutely calm and collected to looking a little bit nervous.
Well, I think certainly everybody's starting to get nervous now in this group. You know, it's a crucial time, and you know, you're thinking about the tactics. What tactics should you use? You know, you're looking at the other riders, and if you're feeling good, and you're always going to start getting them butterflies in your stomach a little bit, because you've got a Paris Roubaix to play for here. And as I said a bit earlier, the riders who are suffering a bit more, they also say, well, there's going to be rivalry here. If you look at Pozzato, you look at Boonen, you look at Hushovd, they are going to be marking each other, and maybe I could play off of that and going the attack in the last number of kilometers. And if I get a moment where the rivalry, they play that against each other, you could take that 10-15 seconds advantage. And I think Van Summeren is going to be thinking in that direction, because when you're in this 20 final kilometers situation, it's 6 men who are going to contest the victory here today. You always start calculating, and you start thinking the tactics in your mind.
1:50 now the gap has gone out. Right, that's it. Let's nail the colours to the mast. They're coming from this 6. The winner is coming from this 6. This is the group behind Chavanel, the head of it. He's got no reason to chase. Breschel is still in that group, by the way. He's right at the back. 20 kilometers to go, then we're really coming down to the point when they're going to start working through things in their mind. Exactly, what am I going to do? How am I going to shed this guy in front? Boonen's going, what do? Do I sit here and let them take me there? And nobody's going to come up from behind, because I've got 2 riders behind. Hoste's going, well, Van Summeren's doing some work up the front. That's good. Let's keep the pace rolling along. I've got to shadow some other guys. I've got to shadow Flecha and do something. Now Chavanel seems to be pushing on. Oddly, but there we are. Go back to the lead group there. Put yourself in that group. Make it 7, Sean. A mythical 7 with a Sean Kelly in that front group. Now, what would your tactics be against the riders you see around you?
Well, my tactic would be to try and keep it together and get to the final sprint here. So it depends on what type of rider you are, and if you look at a Boonen, for example, if he could get to the sprint here with this group of 6 riders, or with 2 or 3 riders for that matter, and fight for the victory in the final sprint, I think Boonen would be happy with that. And the other riders are going to have certainly different ideas, the ones who haven't got a chance in this sprint. So it all depends on what type of rider you are, and you base your tactic, you work your tactic on that.
Sector 5, then just 4 after this, with the Carrefour de l'Arbre is coming up very shortly. This is a nasty section as well. The Champanon-Pervelle, then Gruson, Hem, and into Roubaix itself. The final section is a next to nothing section. Basically, it's a traffic island up the middle of the road where they've put a load of cobblestones on it. That's about it. Really, 1:38 is the gap. Well, they're not giving up quite yet, but that's due down to the dig of Sylvain Chavanel. What was that all about, Sean?
Well, I think he realises that the group, a lot of very tired legs in that group, and the Saxo certainly finished like his game over for Kurt-Asle, as we've seen, and he just probably feels pretty good and decides to go in the attack. And if the riders are really on the limit, on the rivet, as they say in cycling terms, he could get out of this group and try and come across in the end. But it's it's a big ask to close down this gap, which is growing out to be almost to 2 minutes. I think it will be touching quite shortly, but certainly Chavanel looks to be still interested, and still I suppose feeling quite good. And if you can get away and just start time trialing on your own and try and get across to this one, why not?
Fair enough. You're the man who knows. And look at the Flandrians coming out. All the Flemish here. We're not very far from the Belgian border, of course, up in Roubaix, the industrial northern French town of Roubaix, lining the streets here. Now is that an R80? It's a BMW R80. We saw that outside the accreditation yesterday. A nice bit of vintage machinery. Van Summeren still driving things along on the front here. He's keeping the pace fairly steady. Now, what is going to happen with Leif Hoste? Is Leif Hoste just looking at what Flecha's going to do? Is Flecha looking at what he's going to do? We've got 3 good sprinters here. Boonen, Pozzato, and Hushovd. A man who's strong and a good classics rider, but not a sprinter, Leif Hoste. Juan Antonio Flecha, again, not a sprinter, although he can go fast enough on his day. Not a sprinter. He's going to have to try and do something. And Van Summeren is the man in the middle of nowhere here. Is there any possibility that Van Summeren could take advantage of everybody looking at each other at the end?
Yes, there certainly is. And I think Van Summeren riding on the front at the moment, if you set the pace on the front, the other riders might be happy just to follow, keep quite a strong pace, and that's maybe what Van Summeren needs here, because if he allows Flecha somebody to take the front and really up the pace, he might have problems following.
Oh, there he goes. Flecha goes with Van Summeren in his wheel. They were looking over his shoulder. Johan Van Summeren knew that Flecha was going to go then. He's just stuck with him. And who's chasing on? It's Boonen, Pozzato, and then Hoste. And at the back, beginning to, I think, just being caught out a little bit and having to get his head down is Thor Hushovd. Hushovd is looking like he's going to be suffering in this if the pace keeps going. Well, Flecha just easing a little bit. Van Summeren very quickly on his wheel there. They've all managed to keep it together. Another attack like that could spell disaster for the Cervelo man. Well, a big dig by Juan Antonio Flecha out of that corner, almost Comesa style, seeing who could get on the wheel. Van Summeren was directly in there. Suddenly he looks from the man who'd be working for Hoste to working for himself. Leif Hoste looks like he's having a little bit of trouble. This is Sylvain Chavanel. Who's he got in his wheel? It must be Heinrich Haussler, surely. It is Heinrich Haussler. I'd love to know what the gap is there. There's Haussler and Chavanel. They're coming to this section now. It must be a minute and a half. Hushovd, we understand, has gone on the attack from Race Radio. Well, 1 minute we're saying he's looking a little, he's suffering a little bit. Until Hushovd, oh, he almost collides, and they've gone down behind. Somebody's gone down. Oh, Flecha goes down. Leif Hoste's gone down. Oh, a disaster for Juan Antonio Flecha. Who else? Van Summeren. Oh, Flecha went down ahead of, oh my word, Hoste went down right on his chest. Oh, I think he must have banged his chin on that as well. Oh, it was the front wheel that went away from Juan Antonio Flecha. Oh, that's a disaster for Flecha and for Hoste and Van Summeren. Well, the whole nature of the game has changed here. Flecha, it's the rear wheel that goes away. There goes Hoste into him and straight down. Ow! Oh, my word. And you know, it looked to me as though Hushovd only narrowly avoided hitting the motorcycle as well. And it gets Hushovd and Boonen now. What a race this is. It's just changed, flipped on its head immediately. Well, I thought this man was looking a bit dead and buried after the last attack, Sean, but suddenly Hushovd has just completely come to life.
Yes, well, certainly he looked to be in trouble to react to that attack by Flecha, and you know, immediately attacks. But sometimes if you're feeling a bit, you know, when it's really turned on, when it's, you know, the pace gets really fast, going the attack, and you know, there could be a little bit of rivalry with the other ones, and that maybe was the case. But certainly, you know, this crash has caused major problems. We see Hushovd actually, he almost slided off as well, so maybe that corner there was a little bit of wet on the cobblestones, and certainly, you know, it's going to be really difficult for the other ones.
Oh my word, no! Oh, he just ran wide. Hushovd collides with the barriers, and Boonen is riding away by himself. Look, he just takes it wide. Oh, he tries to keep it together. Oh, well, he's getting back up, I think. But Boonen's just by himself. It's just carnage all of a sudden. Tom Boonen, with 15 kilometers to go, is the only man who stayed upright. And the crowd have seen this on the big screen here at the Velodrome and gone bananas here. Well, I'm almost at a loss for words. All of a sudden, it's changed in his head. We had a group of 6 riders, any one of them calculating who can do what, who can do this, who can do that. But it's just been, it's a case of who's may stay upright.
Well, that is Paris Roubaix. You know, it's such a difficult race in the end, and I think Hushovd there we see, you know, Boonen was really, you know, turning it on and really putting on the pressure. Hushovd suffering a bit, and you know, it's when you're starting to suffer, your reactions are not as great, and I think, you know, a little bit of tiredness was the cause of Hushovd's crash there. Yeah,
it looked, well, we were saying he looked a little bit under pressure, just trying to hang in there. It looked like he was trying to hang in. There's only one man can catch him now. It's Pozzato, the man who's been the shadow of Tom Boonen for the last week. Look at him, he's chasing, he's got the man in his sights, and he knows the two of them are going to get to the end by themselves now, unless there's some almighty charge from behind. Boonen looking over his shoulder to see where anybody is. I think he doesn't quite know his luck here. Pozzato rounds the corner. Is he getting any closer to him at all? Back up on the bike is Hushovd. He's now behind the 2 men from Silence-Lotto, Johan von Summeren and Leif Hoste. Where's Juan Antonio Flecha? That's the question. They're now rounding the corner. Can they work together to get back on, Sean?
Well, I think certainly we can see the 2 Silence-Lotto riders are really working well together, and Hushovd, if he's got anything left in the tank, he will also contribute here. But I think it's up front is the real race. It's the time trial now between Boonen and Pozzato, and it's going to be an interesting one. Can Pozzato close it down here? It looks like he is closing very slowly, but it's, you know, it's man against man here in a straight out time trial.
Tom Boonen is an absolute monster. He's beasting this. 1 minute and 5 seconds to Flecha from Boonen. Oh, that's the end of Flecha's cabal. What a great shade for Flecha. Oh, how close can he get to the motorbike? And get a little bit of a toe. Is Boonen. Look at the crowds, the Flandrians lining either side of the road, and Boonen absolutely beasting it. Oh
my God.
What is going on in this race? It's just all of a sudden turned on its head. Well, I see the Tibetan flags out. Obviously a political statement because there are no Tibetan riders in the race. Filippo Pozzato has just got to keep his cool head really now, Sean. I mean, he's got to go as hard as he can, but he can't blow up on this. This is the chasing duo of Chavanel and Haussler. Haussler just sitting on here for Chavanel, seeing if he can get across. How close are they? We don't know. It's just all blown to pieces now. What an extraordinary day. It looked as though we were going to have a real showdown with 6 riders, but it's all gone to cock now. The order on the road at the moment then is Tom Boonen ahead of Filippo Pozzato. Pozzato had him in his sights, but with this sort of crowd closing in on the road, you'll never know. I wonder whether Pozzato would ever be hampered, not just by people running across the road, but by the fact that the Flemish were there. They could see Boonen coming first, and then they see an Italian. We'd like to think not, but you never know. Oh, Boonen really giving it as much as he can, just on that corner. It's a good job that one was dry. With less than 13 kilometers to go, Boonen is absolutely beasting it. And how far back is Pozzato, who's looked so cool?
10 seconds.
10 seconds is not much. But it looks to me as though he's beginning to suffer a little. Or more than a little. I think I'd be suffering more than a little at this stage of the game. 235 kilometers done. 10 seconds and then 45 seconds back to the very unfortunate Leif Hoste, Johan von Summeren and Thor Hushovd. And Hushovd, who actually managed to miss the first accident involving Flecha, Hoste and van Summeren, but ran wide in his attempt to get away with Tom Boonen. Just tiredness, we think, creeping in there. Oh, Pozzato is trying so hard to hang in there. This is, as you say, Sean, mano a mano, this one now.
Yes, it certainly is, and it looks like that you know, he's starting to get in difficulty, but everybody, you know, the Boonen, Pozzato on the limit here. You just, you know, you give it all you've got here all the ways to the finish line. And it looked like Pozzato was coming back there, but it seems to be stabling a bit now at the 10-12 seconds mark. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, who has got the most left in the tank. That's what it's all going to come down to.
This is back at the head of the race with Tom Boonen, who's obviously had a bit of a spill at some point. We didn't see it, must have been pretty minor. And Boonen, whose whole season built around winning either the Tour of Flanders or this Paris Roubaix. If he wins this, he goes into the 3-time winner club. Sorry, Sean, he's going to outstrip you if he wins this one. Sean Kelly nodding sagely next to me, 2-time winner himself. Boonen already a winner last year, of course, and in 2005. Van Petegem has won 3 times. Museu won 3 times. Francesco Moser, a 3-time winner. As was Eddie Merckx, also a 3-time winner, and Rick van Looy. So great Belgian heritage of winning here. Roger de Vlaming, though, holds the outright record at the moment of 4 wins. I tell you, if he makes 3, Boonen has got a good chance of at least equaling that. And Hushovd now pulling along at van Summeren, who looks in slightly better shape than Leif Hoste. I'm not surprised. Leif Hoste must have smashed his... well, he managed to land on his chest, but it looked like he might have banged his chin on the ground as well. We haven't had a good shot of him. 51 seconds back to those 3. 2:10 back to these 2. Heinrich Haussler once again turning in a great performance, getting away towards the end of a race. 10.8 kilometers to go. Soon will be under the 10 to go banner. Well, the board at the side of the road. And Pozzato has got a real fight on his hands to try and eat up the gap, the 10-second gap that there was up to this man. Absolutely incredible that people still think that they can run across the cobblestones. They've got time with this. I don't think anybody knows how fast these guys are going when they reach them.
15 seconds.
15 seconds. Well, I think we're just getting... Was that... according to the police, apparently, on race radio, 11 people injured, but only minor injuries. In spectators, this is, with that motorcycle crash. 11 people. Incredible, but apparently only minor injuries. Thank God for that. Well, he's going absolutely at it. Hands on the hoods, giving it everything he can. Pozzato is now at 15 seconds. Under 10 kilometers to go. Tom Boonen seems to be riding his way towards finish. There is Pozzato. That doesn't look like 15 seconds to me. That looks closer. Well, he's got 14 on there. I don't think that's right, Sean. It looks closer to me.
Yes, it certainly does, but you know, it's not over yet. 14 seconds. Boonen, we see there, he hasn't got any drink on bottle on his bike, and that's very important. Maybe he got knocked out coming over a section of cobbles. Pozzato, we see he still have got a bottle on his bike, which is very important because you know, with 9 kilometers to go for Boonen, you could start to tie on the last number of kilometers, and it's certainly not over. As we see, it looks like Pozzato is starting to just claw his way back to Boonen.
It looks like it is to me. He's beginning to claw his way towards the rear wheel of Tom Boonen. This is it's got to be an epic struggle. 13 seconds they got here. I think it's closer. Epic battle now as the Belgian tries to make it 3 wins to his credit, and Filippo Pozzato tries to get the first Italian win for 10 years. Andrea Taffi was the last man to take an Italian win in 1999. But Pozzato then following in an Italian tradition, if that's the case. Pozzato really fighting to get up there. 13 seconds. He's taken 2 seconds according to the timing here out of him, but it looks closer to me with 8.5 kilometers to go. Tom Boonen trying to make his season absolutely spectacular again. Well, he had a lot of motorcycles and cars in front of him. You never know how much that was at. He managed to get quite close to a couple of them. Pozzato's been doing this by himself. The Katusha rider. This would be the absolute justification for Katusha's millions spent on riders, and Pozzato was one of their big buys. And he needs to get a big win. This would be one for him. So it seems to be going out against 16 seconds. Well, it's certainly yo-yoing. I still don't think it's over, Sean.
Well, it's certainly looking a bit more on the side to Boonen at the moment. It's going out 16 seconds, and the earlier shot there, it looked like Pozzato gave a bigger effort, and he seemed to be closing it down. But you know, you have to be able to continue on doing that. Where Boonen out front, if you calculate your efforts and just continue on working at it close to the 100%, and that seems to be what Boonen has been doing. Well, Pozzato seems to just make that an extra bit of effort, but it's just paying the price at the moment, and it looks like that it's slightly advantage to Boonen at the moment.
Under 8 kilometers to go. This is Hem. Just one more section after this. This is the last real section of cobbles. There's a short section running into the velodrome in Roubaix, but really it's nothing compared to the stuff we've been seeing today. And Tom Boonen looking to do a back-to-back victory. Well, I'm trying to think. The last man to do back-to-back victories would have been, in fact, Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle back in 92 and 93. So that hasn't happened for a long time. We've had people winning, 2 and 3, but not back-to-back victories. The last then being Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle in 93, riding in GAN colours. 92, riding in for Z. Used the RockShox then, by the way, that we were talking about earlier. Pozzato trying to win his very first Paris Roubaix. He was shadowing Tom Boonen for the whole of the Tour of Flanders, and they sort of basically nullified each other. And now Van Summeren beginning to suffer as Thor Hushovd can see a 3rd place on the podium perhaps coming his way. He's fighting and fighting. He's trying to do everything he can to get a 3rd place. Hoste will just have to try and hang in there, I think.
Yes, certainly. I think Hoste is also feeling the effects here, and it looked like Hushovd is certainly getting it together here, and looks pretty good at the moment, and we can see the gap 53 seconds. It's certainly not growing out hugely, and of course Hushovd, he realizes that a place on the podium is possible for him, because if he can arrive to the finish here with the Lotto man, well then he certainly could out sprint him in the finish, because he's certainly the better finisher of the two.
That's it in terms of big cobbled sections for Tom Boonen. Filippo Pozzato is coming up to this left-hand bend. It'll see the very last major section of cobbles under his wheels. And the Italian now, maybe, is there anything he can do about this? 16 seconds the gap. Is there anything he can do? He's got to get his head down and try as hard as he possibly can. 18 seconds now. I think it's slipping away from him. Gradually, the chance of winning is not going to happen for Pozzato. And I'll tell you what, these two aren't that far behind either. Is this not the section we've just seen them coming out of? They're not that far behind Pozzato, surely, unless there was delayed shots of Pozzato. I can't imagine that it is, but Boonen, well, 48 seconds is the gap that they have down, but it didn't look that far to me. Boonen has 18 seconds advantage on Pozzato, and the scale is beginning to tip in his favour, Sean.
Yes, certainly is, and you know, when you're out front, you know, you just you know, that little bit of extra energy, you seem to pull it out of somewhere, and but it's the same situation for Pozzato. He's alone, he hasn't got a rider with him, where, you know, if somebody tagging along on your wheel, it's been man against man, and Boonen has come out, you know, the strongest in this two-up battle, really, for the victory. But of course, you know, we must remember that Pozzato, he got caught up in that crash, and that's how he lost contact with Boonen. But, you know, that's Paris Roubaix, that's the risk of this race.
Certainly is. Well, stabbing his authority here over Filippo Pozzato. Was a bit annoyed with Pozzato was Tom Boonen during the Tour of Flanders. Just sat there on his wheel, shadowed him. The two of them watching each other, and it was Steindevolder who went off to win last weekend, but just 5 kilometers to keep it together for Tom Boonen. He doesn't look any signs of failing at the moment. The man who made such an impression early on when he was at US Postal in this race, riding in as a virtual unknown to the cycling world. 24 seconds now. Pozzato is beginning to crack. Boonen's not going any faster. Pozzato is beginning to feel the pressure. The other thing we've got to remember, of course, is Pozzato has had no team around him at all right the way through the race. He's just had to ride by himself and sit on the wheel of Tom Boonen, because we've had Chavanel, we've had Steindevolder, we've had maybe 3-4 riders from Quick-Step, but nobody from Katusha at all.
No, certainly not. But I think you know, Boonen, he had the advantage, of course, you know, with riders up there for quite a long time with him. But he's certainly, you know, done a lot of attacking as well in this race. He hasn't been hanging about and waiting for the others to go in the attack. He was the one who really started up at you know, a number of times. So you know, it's certainly been, I think, of the two, Pozzato, Boonen has been the strongest today, and he's proving that now at the moment, because it's just really, it's man against man. The team situation hasn't really come into it in this final kilometers, and Boonen is just that, you know, that little bit stronger, that little bit more in the tank.
27 seconds now. It's over for Pozzato. The dream of winning here, to be the first Italian since Andrea Tafi 10 years ago. It's not going to happen.
No, and certainly Pozzato has to be careful, because 52 seconds back to that group of Hushovd and Hoste, so he has to, you know, really keep on working at it, because they are two, of course, and they're working quite well, sharing the pace setting on the front. So Pozzato really has, you know, to keep concentrated and you know, give it everything here, just to be sure of his second place on the podium.
Here's Tom Boonen then. Still riding hard. I mean, everything will be screaming in that body now, but he knows he'll be getting the calls from the car, knowing that the gap is going out. He's just got to keep going now for less than 4 kilometers. He won his first Paris Roubaix race in 2005. He then had a gap of 2 years. Fabian Cancellara and Stuart O'Grady getting a CSC back-to-back, and then Boonen doing the business again last year. Now it looks like he's going to join the 3-time winner club. They include, remember, Peter van Petegem, Johan Museu, Francesco Moser, Eddie Merckx getting 3. Rick van Looy has 3 to his name. And it looks as though he's going to join that group. This is Thor Hushovd with Leif Hoste working with each other. And are they actually eating into the lead that Filippo Pozzato has ahead of them? Pozzato is not going to win Paris Roubaix. He's not going to take an Italian victory here. We haven't had one for 10 years. We've had an Australian, a Swiss rider, a Swede, a handful of Belgians. And we're going to get another one today. Well, it's been an epic race, Sean. I mean, amazing. The last 30 kilometres has turned everything around.
Yes, certainly. You know, it looked like that. You know, we're going to have these 6 men going a long ways into the final, and suddenly a crash, and you know, it just changed the whole situation, the whole race, and. It's all about experience as well, bike handling, of course. And we see Boonen, you know, he went around those corners, and it's amazing, like the bike handle he have on the cobbles, the way he can control it, and that's all about experience also. And also, if you're feeling good, still feeling fresh, it's very important, because I reckon when Hushovd took the fall, he was a bit on the limit, really hanging on the wheel of Boonen, and just went that little bit too wide, and the reflexes just weren't as good as they should have been, and paid the price for that. And you know, we see Boonen here really suffering, but this is a very difficult section. As we drove in this morning, we see that it's a little bit uphill, and it's a one from past experience also. It's, you know, it really hurts big time here.
Everything will be screaming. Every sinew, every muscle absolutely crying out to stop. 33 seconds now is the advantage, though, that Tom Boonen has over Filippo Pozzato. There is Pozzato. And I think he's just hanging on for grim death now. I wouldn't be surprised if these 3 riders can work together. They might be able to see him in the distance now. Well, he's had a bit of luck, bad luck recently, as this man. That's the 2nd time. Well, more, just very briefly, more updates on the crash with the motorcycle. 11 injured, 3 apparently quite heavily injured. So now is the update. So we'll just, if we get anything after the finish, as Tom Boonen is going to take his 3rd win here, we'll let you know. But that is very bad news. In fact, worse than we perhaps first thought. 11 injured in total, 3 possibly very heavily. Certainly the guy or the spectator on the ground. So they go under the 1 kilometre go banner. Didn't look too good at all. They swing hard right here. Here we go. Into the velodrome then will be Tom Boonen. And let's listen to the crowd, because he's just going to come in very shortly now. Ahead of us, we'll see the big form of the Belgian. We see the commissaire's car in the distance going off. He's already celebrating on your screens. You can see, yes, I am number 1. Here he comes, right-hand turn into the velodrome. Round he goes, a huge cheer goes up here. And this man has been in the right place at the right time all the way through the race, Sean.
Yes, well, certainly he's ridden a magnificent race. Technically, you know, he's made no fault at all. And but certainly, you know, the man of the race, the man in form as well. Absolutely,
he's going to join the true greats now. Absolutely join the true greats. He's taken the bell. He's riding by himself. Pozzato is not on the velodrome yet. Here comes Tom Boonen for victory. He is number 1. He gets a 3rd. Boonen capable of celebrating. And now Pozzato comes under the banking. Boonen joins the great Eddie Merckx, who'll be one of the first people to celebrate with him, I'm sure. He joins Rick van Looy. And of course he can now tilt at Roger de Vlaming's 4 record. There he is. Tom Boonen wins Paris Roubaix. There is Filippo Pozzato, always his shadow, and in the end it didn't pay off for him. He's still got a little way to go. He slaps him on the shoulder, say well done. So they were, of course, teammates at Quick-Step. Pozzato went off. He wanted something else for himself. But Pozzato is going to take 2nd. And where are the others? Just coming into the stadium very shortly will be the last three. Are they coming underneath us? Oh, here they are. They're underneath us already. We can't see them on the screen. But it's Van Summeren, Hushovd in second spot, and Leif Hoste flying third. Well, Hushovd, we wanted to take the sprint out for third place. Filippo Pozzato crosses himself, takes second. Not to be victory for him this year. But second, nothing to be sniffed at. Here's going to be the sprint. Who's going to take third? This will go down in your Palmares. Third is nothing to be ashamed of here, especially after the incredible last 25 kilometers we've had. Hoste, he's got to go early around the outside because the man ahead of him has got a super sprint on him, but he's pretty tired. It's Hushovd who takes third. Just a little disappointment in the shake of the head there. Hoste takes fourth. Van Summeren is spent. Nothing left for Van Summeren. Here comes Juan Antonio Flecha. Oh, more dreadful luck for Flecha. Fifth for him. And of those 6 riders we thought we were going to test everything, it just everything flipped on its head in the last 30 kilometers. Quite an extraordinary race. Well, they'll be heading off to the showers shortly, and there'll be so much mixed emotions. Flecha, who's had such a good record here, again no victory for him. He was looking so good, but in the end, the best part of 2¼ minutes down. But a huge clap for him. Everybody recognizing what a great ride he's done today, and a shake of their head. These are the riders who came out from the group behind, the strong men who are trying to get as good a place as possible. Haussler riding the wheel of Sylvain Chavanel to the end. He'll just nip out and try and take the place from Chavanel. This for 6th and 7th, I think. 7th and 8th, sorry. Chavanel wearing the number 2 on his back. Haussler, who's had such a good season. They've had great seasons, these two, Sean. Incredible season so far.
Yes, well, certainly the Cervelo team has a magnificent season. Considering it's a totally new team built, just at the end of last year, and the performance they're putting in right from the beginning of the year, but also in the big major classics. And that was the question: would they be doing that? And they're certainly continuing to shine.
Haussler taking the next spot home, then Chavanel coming home. Well, Patrick Lefebvre reckons he's the best buy of anybody anywhere this year. And you've got to hand it to him. Lefebvre can spot him. Chavanel takes 7th, Haussler 6th, Flecha 5th, Van Summeren 4th, Hoste 3rd. Nope, that's the other way around, sorry, it's 8th to Chavanel, 7th to Haussler, 6th Flecha, 5 Van Summeren, 4 Hoste, 3rd Hushovd, Pozzato 2nd, and Tom Boonen takes a 3rd win here in Paris Roubaix. Well, in the end, it was 47 seconds the gap from Pozzato to Boonen. Brave attempt to ride back onto the wheel by Filippo Pozzato, but he really is a beast of a rider when he gets the bit between his teeth, doesn't he, Tom Boonen? Well, that has made his season now. And once again, quick step of the dominant classics team. Another win here. A win a week ago with Stein de Volder, and a win with Tom Boonen this year. So double back-to-backs for this team. Terrific win for Boonen. A bike change as well halfway through the race. Welcome back to live shots then. That's Kurt-Asle just coming home. Another Cervelo rider just crossing the line. Klier, I think. Didn't get to see it now. Big group coming over the line. Big losers today. George Hincapie just come underneath us, wearing number 51. Missed the break. Missed getting anywhere near Tom Boonen.
Het was ongelooflijk. Het zal altijd wel zijn als ik er nog nooit zo hard afgezien als vandaag. Ik had in het begin van de wedstrijd gevallen, veel pech gehad. Fietswisselen moeten doen op 30 kilometer van de aankomst. En waarom? We hebben 2 wielen. Ik heb 30 kilometer meeslepend wiel gereden. En eigenlijk heel een dag gedacht zodat alles tegen zat. En we voelen me eigenlijk niet slecht, maar ik had veel pijn in mijn linkse been van die valpartij. En altijd maar blijven doorbijten. En ik was precies de enige die niet kapot ging. En het voordeel was dat zo'n lastige wedstrijd was, dat de rest echt brak. En ik ben gewoon eigenlijk op mijn niveau blijven doorrijden.
Zag je Hushovd vallen op de Carrefour de l'Arbre?
Nee, ik heb het niet gezien.
Voelde je
Ik heb interviewed in Flemish, is he here?
Op de Carrefour.
Or Dutch?
En dan ben ik gewoon vol beginnen doorrijden. En ik heb hem even zien plooien. En dan weet ik niet wat er gebeurt. Dus ik heb
My Dutch isn't particularly good, Sean. What's he saying?
Well, he said it's just an unbelievable day. In the earlier part of the race, I had a fall. My left hip, my left leg was hurting quite a lot, but I just continued on. And in the final, he said I just, kept on concentrating, kept on riding. And he was asked the question, did he know that Hushovd crashed? He said, I heard the noise behind me, and I reckon there was some problem. But when I found myself out on the front on my own, I just kept going, kept working at it, and gave it all I had.
That's all he could do, really, when you think about it. He just had to keep going as hard as possible. It just goes to show what we were saying at the top of the show. If you were joining us live, we were talking about Service Garavan's comments in a magazine, Cycle Sport, recently saying you've just got to keep going. Got to keep going, whatever happens in Paris Roubaix. This is the magnificent side of the velodrome here. The outdoor velodrome in Roubaix. And what a terrific reception Tom Boonen has got. He really does join some of the true greats of cycling. Rick van Looy taking 3 wins for Belgium. Of course, Eddy Merckx doing the same. Roger de Vlaming taking 4. Francesco Moser with 3. Johan Museeuw with 3. Van Petegem with 3 as well. It's interesting, some of the real greats of cycling only won it once. Fausto Coppi, for example, only won this race once. His brother Serge was given an equal win with Andre Mai back in 1949. There is the result then. Tom Boonen takes his 3rd Paris-Roubaix victory ahead of Filippo Pozzato of Katusha. The gap 47 seconds. Then Thor Hushovd, the Norwegian riding for Cervelo, was the next man home, out sprinting Leif Hoste, and Johan von Summeren looked absolutely spent by the end. How different it could have been. We thought for all the world, Sean, that they were going to get 5 or 6 riders coming to the end towards to contest this.
Yes, well, certainly we expected, that group to go very, very close to the end, and we were expecting some attacks, but that crash just changed the whole situation of the race.
So a 3rd victory in this greatest of races, Paris-Roubaix, for Tom Boonen and Belgium. Well, I guess I might have to concede that this possibly is a joint favourite race with the Tour of Flanders after all. Pozzato congratulating Tom Boonen. Well, the cycling isn't over here on Eurosport. Remember, we've got the Ardennes Classics to come. Amstel Gold, Liège, Bastogne-Liège coming up in a week's time. We start. And this is other riders coming in. But very, very new to Eurosport, live Tour of Turkey. On Eurosport Stage 2 tomorrow, live at 1400 CET. We've not had the Tour of Turkey before. Amstel Gold next Sunday at 3:15 CET. And then, of course, we move on for the whole of that Ardennes week. Liège, Bastogne-Liège, 26th of April at 1400 CET. You'll see a completely different style of rider in the Ardennes Classics. Remember, there's Flecha on in the middle. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a fantastic race. I've enjoyed every second of it, even freezing my bits off up here. in the shadows of the grandstand here in the Roubaix Velodrome. I'm so pleased you've been able to join us live. Stick with us all week for the Tour of Turkey, and of course we start the Ardennes Classics next weekend. Another win for Tom Boonen. He really is one of the greats, and the mantelpiece will be heavy with cobblestones now. From Sean and I, bye for now.